Hello, everyone. If I can do this and that.
No?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was like, not sure because of fucking car speaker. You can hear me? Hello? Nick?
Yeah, yeah, I'm here. Here.
Oh, okay.
Wow,
Your microphone.
my mic wasn't being picked up. That was crazy. That's
Yeah, it's kind of going like, it sounds like it's kind of going in and out.
that's on purpose, so it doesn't like bleed everywhere.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I have to be talking directly in it, which you can probably hear me now, right?
Are you streaming right now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm about to listen to Netanyahu say some stuff.
About the deal?
Yeah, he 43 minutes ago he just made an announcement.
He's probably fucking pissed.
We'll see. We'll see. Let's find out.
All right, let's listen to it. Will I hear it?
If you're watching stream, probably.
Israel, dear citizens of Israel,
No, I'm not.
decades
Yeah.
I
Okay.
struggle against Iran
It's actually really annoying because of the,
nuclear.
I'm just gonna watch the subtitles. His translator
I
guy.
don't know, man. I just think that there's like this really weird thing that's happening in the world right now where, like, don't get me wrong, the stereotypes that Americans have already faced over our like lifetime haven't been great, which is annoying, right? Because in groups and out groups and whatnot. But like now, it's almost like
We're fulfilling the
so
fucking prophetical
tense.
annoying.
It's just very tense. Like, everywhere you go, like for instance, like I can't even like so like jujitsu. That's a good example, right? Because you got a lot of refugees that came here, and most Germans don't really believe in like violent combat sports. So the majority of people who are at these like jiu-jitsu competitions are from Syria or Iraq or Afghanistan or Iran, right? And then you're there, and like you have an American flag pop up, and they have an Iranian flag pop up, and it's just like feels like we shouldn't like each other right now. And I don't really like that feeling because there's like 400 Syrians here, maybe like three Americans, and they're all just staring at you like, ah, that's the enemy. And you're like, damn, that's crazy because I'm just a dude here that's like a mom. So, but they just assume you're a soldier if you're out here in Germany and you're American. You know what I mean?
Uh, yep. Netanyahu is quite literally just like, in less or more words, Bryce. He's kind of just going. Says, "Dear Israel, I have been working for a long time on Iran for a long time. I will stand by it, even with an agreement, without an agreement." The first words he says.
Wait, what?
He's essentially saying that I will continue to work on Iran with an agreement or without an agreement.
Oh, so he's literally just saying he's gonna bomb them anyways.
In less or more words, yeah, he's not he's not closing the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, they were shooting like missiles way before we even got involved. Like during all the conflict with, the Palestinians in Gaza and everything before. And dude, honestly, it's
Dude, the
just
moment
fucking
Trump was
war crimes
elected
at
in
this point.
2016, fucking Netanyahu jumped on the opportunity because he knew Trump would be. I mean, Biden and Obama, and Biden was VP, obviously, then, right? So Biden has a great relationship with Netanyahu. Again, they're like best friends, or not best friends, but as far as like political leaders go, they've known each other forever. And Biden's actually pretty hard on him. Like he was like this close, like fucking this close to just stopping all military aid entirely to Israel.
No, there was a point where they were withholding weapons because they were saying that I think Israel was suspected of using aerosol bombs or something. I don't remember what it was, but they did withhold shipments of weapons,
Yeah.
specific types of weapons, like I think it
Biden's
was
camp,
Moabs and things like that.
Biden's administration was literally like a day away from literally stopping all aid. But what ended up happening is another part of his administration told him that, look, it might be the right thing to do to stop military aid, but if we stop military aid and then something does happen, as in like, Arab countries or, something, the worst could happen, and then Israeli citizens will die. And that was the only reason that Biden didn't stop the aid. He wanted to, though. Like he was ready to, which honestly kind of makes sense. But Trump, Netanyahu knows that Trump literally hates Iran, and he used that to his advantage.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think too that the Trump MAGA people, it's like the political momentum you had talked about before. A huge portion of like his whole thing was like, oh, we're gonna claim that. I think he did something where it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is a while ago that I remember this happening. He declared that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel or something,
Yeah.
and he has his son or his son-in-law,
Jared
Jared
Kushner, who's Jewish.
really pushing him to be like Israel, just like super pro-Israel in the conflict. Like before,
Well, his
there was
dad,
some
Jared
balance
Kushner's dad,
between-
is Charlie Kushner, right? Or what the fuck his name is? He's like a fucking. They're insanely Jewish.
Well, and the thing was,
They're also
too, is,
pieces
like,
of shit.
so they have this like there was more of a balancing act between the Palestinians and Israel with all previous administrations, right? Like it was a hard political issue. But with Trump, it's like, no, we're just gonna go with whatever Israel wants to do because
Yeah.
they're our ally.
Well,
And
Trump just
now
uses
it's
him
like-
as his information. Like pretty much every single thing that we've done is just Netanyahu and Israel telling us what to do. But
Well, you
Trump
think
doesn't
about
care.
it though, like correct, but you think about it, it's exactly that political momentum
Hmm.
that got us into this war with Israel because we've literally gotten so doubled down to do. It's like Romeo and Juliet syndrome.
Yeah, as soon as
Right,
we
you know,
left the
that is, like,
JCPOA, right, we lost all capability of knowing where their nuclear program was, and being in the dark like that. I mean, we kind of put ourselves in a position where we needed to strike. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Oh, when we lost the old deal.
Yeah, because we lost access to Iran's nuclear facilities, and Iran wasn't like totally
Yeah.
truthful. They definitely, there were still areas in which we weren't allowed access to, but the areas that we were allowed access to is enough information to know what they were doing in the areas that we didn't have access to, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because there's only so many
Yeah,
places
like,
you can,
it's like,
have centrifuges and shit.
That we're gonna weaponize uranium-235 or whatever.
So when he left, it was like almost 10 years of darkness. And we really had no idea after that point. So he kind of, the political momentum there is like Israel and the US kind of, because of the uncertainty in a way, we almost had to do a strike.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that initial strike, the one where we literally launched out of whatever Louisiana, whatever the fuck
Fucking Kansas?
bombers over Kansas,
Dude.
something crazy like that. I think that was a lot of a show of force too.
It was
where it was
100%.
we scared the shit out of everybody with that one, and I don't actually think that in and of itself, that strike actually kicked off this whole bullshit war. I think it was a precursor for it, like it's another thing that happened. But
It was the
at that
12-day
point,
war.
I don't
Remember the
think Iran
12-day
was
war?
like, oh, going to war.
The 12-day war,
12-day war.
with ICBMs
For
being launched
the
between
5
Israel.
nations. Yeah. That was Israel and Iran, though. We were just giving them our shit, though.
Yeah,
And
but
that depleted our
Israel
fucking missile
knew
storage.
Israel knew that if they striked, then at some point the U.S. would have to capitulate and strike with them, because Israel went ahead and did that operation knowing damn well that they don't have any ordnance to like reach those facilities. So in a way,
Yeah,
Netanyahu like played his hand and knew that Trump would have to use the what are they, the M52, the bunker buster bombs, which by the way probably don't even reach anyway. There's been a lot of like internal public military like research on this, and the problem with Iran's facilities, because all of these bunker busters are tested with regular dirt and concrete bunkers.
Yeah.
And
Not salt.
not basalt, yeah, which is what the entire mountain is made out of in Iran. And basalt, it's very funny. Basalt is like a volcanic rock, right? And basalt, if you look up the military's public data on this as well, the best, probably not the best, but one of the best, like rock materials you can use to mitigate blast waves is literally basalt. It's like the efficacy of it is insane. If you have like a concrete bunker and you put like a fucking, inch of basalt around the bunker, it like lowers the fucking potential of the blast radius to penetrate the bunker by like 30%. So imagine like an entire fucking mountain of basalt.
Yeah. You're not gonna really penetrate that.
You're not gonna penetrate it.
Not without boots on the ground. Not without boots on the ground. And I do think that that's what it would have to progress to in order for us to actually get anything done. And I think there was a hard line where it was like, yeah, a lot of people are going to die if you do that.
A lot of people will die, 100%.
You really don't want another Vietnam. So, like, he really actually just lost a war, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, he did. Yeah, that's kind of the... And also, it's not just that we lost the war. It's more like... It's in addition, not more like... In addition to that, now the strongest power in the Middle East is patently Iran. Even though, Saudi Arabia has tons of fucking... U.S. military equipment.
Oil and money.
They just, they're so like unorganized and don't know how to use any of it yet that it doesn't really matter. They're really unorganized military, even if they buy all this shit.
Well, this is a problem that's actually happened with a lot of militaries in the world that are supposed to be our allies and supposed to work with us, is they become so dependent on the United States that on their own, like they talked about this with England too, they can't land troops and materials and stuff without the United States in a meaningful way.
Correct.
So when all this stuff with Russia popped off, Great Britain is not what it used to be, because they've literally relaxed their militaries, because they're like, well, the U.S. is here anyways. But now that we're seeing issues and evolution, and like we had talked about before, and like Milton Friedman was talking about in his book, what I remember is because we don't have a nationalized military industrial complex, even if we had a portion nationalized, things are so fucking expensive for us. They've literally found this hole of, well, we just produce really cheap FPV drones and send these small bombs to fuck with them. And that's actually enough to really fuck us up, which is crazy.
Yeah,
right? Like,
I mean, China's production, right, is 40,000, or they can produce around 40,000 a day or something like that, or is it a month or day?
Oh my god.
It's 40,000. It's 40,000 each drone, and they can produce hundreds of thousands a month. That's what it was.
I was going crazy. She was fucking triggering the shit out of me last night because she's out here, and she went up to some lady at this German restaurant who's wearing like a Trump hat, Trump shirt. Like, yeah, Trump. And I was like, oh god. So then later I was like, she brought it up. She was talking about how some blue-haired lady was giving her a dirty look in there. And I was like, yeah, because Trump sucks, and like you should stop supporting him. And like I even will admit, like in 2016, I was a little indifferent because I was like, okay, this guy is an outsider. I don't really like a lot of what's going on with government. His selling point was make things better. The rhetoric was kind of good comparatively to now with the actions and everything else happening. When he started talking about tariffs, I was like, man, she's like, tariffs are good. They've been tariffing us forever. And I was like, I just tried to explain it to her. I'm like, oh god, this is like, and I think that I can convince her and my dad a little bit because they know that I know.
Does your dad still support Trump?
Oh no, not anymore. Not after I bitched at him for like 2 hours about it. Because he's smart, right? Like he's not an idiot.
Is smart.
He just doesn't really pay attention.
I remember talking to your dad's friend. What was his name again? The lawyer assistant guy.
Brad. Or,
oh my god.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. The kind of like retarded guy that like hates Mexicans. Oh God, what the fuck is his name?
I
He
can't-
loved me though.
I can't remember,
That guy
but
loved me. He, like,
you know who
he
I'm
sends
talking
me
about.
like nice messages.
He actually liked
Yeah,
me
yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
No, he's cool. He's something with a G, Grunberg or something.
Oh, that's on point. That's close. That's close.
It's so close. Grenville.
Grenville.
It was
Grenville.
Grenville. Yeah, fucking Grenville. Dude, there's a guy, a Mexican, drinking a beer in a truck. We're going through LA. He's like, "That's why we gotta deport all of them." I was like, "That's crazy. That's wild. You're an attorney, dude. Chill."
Yeah, he was interesting.
Yeah, dude. I went to his house one time.
Your
and then I
dad
went
played
to his,
devil's
like,
advocate
office.
in that scenario, by the way. Your dad was more like, I remember I was shit talking Trump, and your dad decided to play devil's advocate a bit. It felt like, and he checked some
Yeah.
of my logic and when I was talking to Grenville, and I actually appreciated what he said. Grenville, though, my God, it was like talking to a brick wall.
Yeah, no, that's what I get from a lot of my friends. Like my buddy, Cody Butcher. He's a sweet kid. But
Oh yeah, Cody.
last night was the UFC 320 whatever the fuck at the White House, and it's like Gaethje something won, and I was happy Gaethje won. He's like, yeah, he's American. He's like, and something about Trump came up, and I was like, that guy sucks. And he's like, what? And then I was like, yeah, and he fucks kids too. And he's like, you don't believe any of that, do you? And I was like, yeah, dude, he fucks kids. Like, what do you mean? Like, that dude absolutely fucks kids.
Federal
What are you
agents have
talking
knocked
about? But I'm kind of trolling, but I'm
on the
not.
doors of
The thing
family,
with my dad, him and I are both very similar in this.
friends, and
If somebody starts having an opinion, I think both of us naturally
Yeah, we're
like
contrarians.
to be
Yeah.
contrarian.
Yeah, we're
We're
contrarians.
contrarian.
Yeah.
So like, I will like, but it's because I'm a little skeptical in nature. But it's not that I'm not listening, and it's not that I'm not.
Yeah, I know exactly what
Like,
you're talking about.
learning
It's like
from
it's like
But I
the true
wanna question
contrarian,
what people
the
say.
true contrarian of like what Christopher Hitchens writes about. It's not like you want to be in like juxtaposition and opposed to everyone you talk to. It's more like to walk the path of a true contrarian means you have to be skeptical of everything all the time, even yourself.
Yeah, and that's the fucking terrible part is when you're like doubting everything you believe all the time. But that also makes you more open to other things.
100%.
I've noticed that. Like I don't, you know that I've never really had like hard stances for the most part. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like things we've disagreed on for years. Like I will always believe that owning guns is fine. Like I like guns.
Yeah, so
like,
do I.
I believe in that. And okay, so you've changed your mind over time because it wasn't always that way.
No, it was.
But I also
It was. It was just
from you
when we talked about it before.
no, but from you, I did indoctrinate. Like, okay, well, yeah, there's a level of common sense that could be applied to regulating this.
Yeah, yeah. That's,
Because we do regulate speech, we do regulate a lot of these other rights that we have to some level. But I also don't want to see it get degraded like the Fourth Amendment, right? And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
the whole problem with, the whole fucking enumerating things into the Constitution versus just believing in natural rights is like, well, now you've limited it just by writing it down.
literally
Because
the
now
act.
this is
The
about-
act of trying to protect a right is only done through limitation. It's kind of funny.
Correct. And that's what's crazy is because you have to outline what it is by definition, right? Or else it just doesn't even make sense. But yeah, no, the thing is with, I think my dad is he's always like that. With my mom, it's just, she has that team mentality.
Yeah,
And
she
so
does.
does her whole family, right? So it's like, oh, that's our team. That's your team. And then last night I got to a point and then she started saying something about liberals. I was like, yeah, I hate those people too. I was like, who I really hate though, Mom? Rich people. Like, it's all about, I was like, do you know who tariffs benefit? Because when you create a tariff, you don't charge the other country or the businesses in the other country money. You charge your own citizens, and those companies and those countries, they have to raise their costs. Therefore, they have to raise their prices, right?
We
But
do
our
technically
country
charge the
companies,
businesses.
our domestic
We do
industry,
technically charge the businesses, but the cost itself is so
the cost goes up.
transferable.
It's passed on.
It's so easily
Yeah.
transferable downstream, right? That like it essentially is usually a regressive tax.
Well, and this is the thing. It doesn't even promote the purchase of domestic goods. What it does is the domestic industry leaders go, oh, well, if that's the price in the market right now, we could raise those prices without raising our costs, so we make more profit.
Yeah, I mean,
So it
I tried
doesn't-
explaining this to
doesn't
people on
benefit us.
stream the other day about how the U.S. because we don't actually allow China to import. Like, we don't allow us, like, we can't buy goods from China in a way. What actually happens is wealthy companies like Apple will take tons of wealth from this country. They'll go build a factory in China, incorporate in China, but technically it's still an American company. So when they build in China or Cambodia and it's like a factory owned by Apple, they can import back to the US because it's an American company. So they essentially bypass the regulations we have against just purchasing a bunch of fucking Chinese goods, which we do. We have tons of countervailance on like rare earth metals from China because we would get obliterated if we opened our market, right? They can produce just so much more than us. But the companies that we let take American wealth, leave, build a factory, import back, they're essentially just taking the wealth, leaving, and then re-importing goods, and then they can bypass all the regulation. Then now we're tariffing, the good as it comes back in. And the company is an American company, right? And they're just going to be like, all right, we'll just pass it on to the consumer. I mean, it's being shipped here anyway. I mean, someone already bought it.
It doesn't matter, yeah. Well, and what's crazy about that too is it's kind of like they're so large they can bypass the rules that, like, small businesses, for instance, that do rely heavily on imports are going to have to eat those costs in a way where they're going to lose customers. They're more affected by their, like, interactions with people on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
These larger companies can kind of adjust and not have as much problems just based on size.
Yeah, they can adjust
so, like,
completely.
You transfer more. Well, back when we were younger, a huge portion of the population was employed by small business, and it still is. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but
like,
the change,
time,
the rate of change away from it's not good. I think is what you're gonna get to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I'd also say that almost sounds like Mexico, where they have that Carlos Slim guy who comes up in that book that you're reading. But Carlos Slim is this very corrupt dude who owns Telmex and all that.
Yep.
And the rules in Mexico are there, but they only apply to other businesses because they have this exemption rule where it's like, this rule applies to you, but not to us.
Yep.
Which is crazy. It's picking winners, and that's basically what's starting to happen. Is you're seeing a more exclusive marketplace rather than an inclusive marketplace. And that's kind of what Trump RX and corporatism is too, right? I'm just asking you because you would actually know.
Yeah, so corporatism,
you did all that research.
In a way, yeah. I mean, corporatism, again, definitionally is you take a government function. No, you take a government function and then you privatize it. And corporatism can be good if, like, a private enterprise or private market can probably efficiently produce the good better, right? Like the necklaces I'm wearing. I don't know if you're watching my stream, but like it would be a pretty stupid idea if we we made a market around making like necklaces that I like to wear from the government, right? That would be really hard to do. It's a really personal good. And the fact that it is so individual in a way, but it's not, is why it is efficiently better done through like a private market.
Okay.
Because it'd be really hard to have everyone agree on how we should spend money on necklaces, right? Like it'd be like asking people to crowdfund your tattoos. Like everyone would all of a sudden be like, well, we should only really pay for a certain amount of ink for this tattoo, like, because this is what all of us agree on, right? Like, it's hard to imagine a nationalized necklace making company. So corporatism at its core is taking a government function and then turning it into a private one. And fascist corporatism, which is what I think Trump is doing in a modern way, is when you try to align pretty much a union or syndicate process between like the state, labor, and the government. So that means you try to really
quick.
Yeah.
Can I interject really quick to ask a question?
Yeah.
Would regular non-fascist corporatism, would an example be the fact that we've privatized all of our military-industrial complex?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't privatized all of it, but yeah, a lot of it has. 100%, yeah.
Oh, I thought that we did. I thought it was all privatized for us.
I mean,
for the most part.
There's a lot of stuff that's not privatized, right? That we still
like
make.
What?
I don't know. Is it really fully private? Actually, almost every part. Every part is done through. Every part is done through. I mean, the healthcare is still socialized when you're in the military, right? That one's one.
That's true. Yeah, the defense health system. Yeah,
And that
like
that
what
shit
you
works
receive.
amazing, right? Until you leave, and then you're no longer useful, and then they just turn it into a.
No, it really is, man. I'll be honest. It's really nice to just be able to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Because like I never had that. And then like when you're a civilian and you're out in the world and you're like hurting or something, you're like, I could go,
But I don't
or
want to pay the
could
copay.
just not have a giant bill.
Yeah, I don't want to go. I don't want to pay the
And
copay.
you know, like, yeah, I don't want to go bankrupt, so I don't really want to do that.
So I mean, that's
Okay,
one
question, so
function.
continue. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's
With the fascist corporatism, I know you had brought up Trump RX, but you're saying what?
so Trump
We were talking
RX.
about what?
Trump RX is so the way fascist corporatism works is, it's about like alignment. So the government sets like the space in which obviously this tripartite bargaining can take place. Tripartite means bargaining between workers, the state, and private companies, right? And the goal of
Yeah.
fascist corporatism at the beginning with Mussolini was to create a syndicate, which means union in Italian. So there was like
Yeah.
these multiple
You know,
unions.
syndication in like finance, basically, yeah, syndication.
Yeah, so the state is supposed to like facilitate a tripartite bargaining between all three. And fascist corporatism ended up being Mussolini giving favors and using public rejection as well as public admiration, and then public admonishing, right? It was this game of like picking winners and losers, and like slowly aligning companies to do what the state said until the companies were at a point where they realized like, oh, we really aren't private companies with control anymore. We have no power, no bargaining power. And Trump is kind of doing that with Trump RX. Like if Trump RX became more popular, right? And he didn't like your company, but it was like the number one way to get drugs, he could just take your company off Trump RX unilaterally.
And then they don't have access.
And then they don't have access.
It's like having
So it's
too
not
much
really
exposure to
it's not
people
really getting
contracts.
rid of companies, but it is functionally like eliminating them. You know what I mean?
Well, question. Well, in reality too, it's like, okay, well,
He has a
it's
presidential deal
exposure.
section, for
It's
fuck's sake. I just pulled it up.
yeah, it's exposure to the state. The state can have absolute exposure over a company.
Yeah.
If it's the regulator.
Correct.
Versus like, okay, so like if you had a contract with a larger corporation, say I work for Walmart and I was a trucker, and all 100% of my truck contracts come from Walmart. Now all of a sudden I'm at risk for them just going, do it cheaper or we're not going to give you the contract anymore. And if I don't, then my business goes under, right? But
Mhm.
this is the government. So even if you don't, like you might have contracts with other businesses, but if you don't have the ability based on regulation to work in a way that's efficient enough to work with them, or they just say you can't do it anymore,
Functionally.
then you're fucked.
Functionally,
Because
yeah.
it's
The
just
word functionally.
you can't do anything.
Yeah. So this is
Yeah, it makes sense.
people want me to like in my debate with Andrew, if you remember, Andrew was like he actually made a video on me. It was the only video he actually made about our debate.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's like 30 minutes of me presenting my like super specific modern corporatism fascist take of what Trump RX is, and I'm going to be honest with you, it's not really, I think it's definitely the pathway towards it, but it's pretty telling that the only video he was able to make of that entire debate was me presenting a very, very, like unique and new, just off the cuff. I had no plans to present it until like the day of like what fascist corporatism can look like in a modern way, right? But
Yeah.
the point is that the functional
Well, I'm curious
aspect.
what he said in the video.
What?
Was he just attacking you in his video? Like it was like a review of what you were saying?
Yeah, because there's a lot more to attack in that, because I'm essentially like creating a new idea as I'm going, right? Like, because this isn't I can't point to Trump RX and be like, look, fascist corporatism. I can only say that it's leading there, because in a way,
Correct.
if you're a company that has Combigan right here, right, which is AbbVie, I guess, or what company is this? Yeah, AbbVie product. If you're the company AbbVie, and we don't even know how much money is actually being purchased on Trump RX. Do we have any info on it? When I look this up, all of it's like hidden. There's literally no way to know how much money is going through this, or
Yeah, and you're a crackhead with that stuff. You could really look up everything.
I mean, I kind of need to know, right? Like, he could be personally profiting off this. There's no way to know where this money's going. Like, if I look up Trump RX total sales right now,
Nothing.
Literally nothing.
What is the function of Trump RX?
That's the thing. Trump RX is Trump publicly starting to try and do like control over the pharmaceutical drug market. So the thing is that he could use the state to facilitate a website like this, in which there are barriers for the state to not just go ahead and control everything to the point where companies can't exist anymore, right? Like, there are ways to do this. Trump is not doing any of that, though, right? Which is kind of the problem. He's uniquely creating this little, like, bargaining website for companies in a way in which he could unilaterally decide which companies win and lose, which is fascist corporatism in a nutshell. It is the guise of, like, real deliberation and, like, bargaining, and then it's a bait and switch. It's, oh shit, we didn't realize that he can just take our drug off whenever he feels like. There's no independent committee, no, like, you know, regulation to say he can't. Like, it's bad.
Is curious because it's the end goal to make it like to have the ends and the means, but is the end that he's selling people on to lower the cost of pharmaceuticals?
No.
So
Yeah.
like,
I feel like that's falling in love with the delusion.
There's so many different insurance companies across the United States and through different state lines that all have to register separately, that we kind of lose this ability to purchase drugs from these companies in a uniform way, and that's why we end up paying more to some degree. And if I'm right, I remember like a lot of it is something that could be done regulatory wise if we were just like, yeah, we're not doing that through all of these different state governments anymore. We're going to enact through a policy of,
there you go.
Common insurance across everything, right?
Yeah, so a bill would be the way to do this. So Congress would do their job. They would essentially like determine how a federal agency underneath the executive should be built, or what agency should handle this. Probably the Food and Drug Administration could easily do this.
Or DHS.
Or DHS. I mean, probably the Food and Drug Administration with help from the DHS. I would assume so, for the controlled substances. And then, once the framework is in place, then the executive can unilaterally direct and execute what it's supposed to look like. That would be the best way to do it, right? Right now, though, I swear to God, Bryce, I'm looking it up kind of again, and there's like, let's see, public information on Trump RX. And I'm actually just going to use AI for this one, just because I feel like it can be a little bit better. So, be thorough, right? Be assiduous. Just give it some slight little fucking... And don't make claims that go beyond the relevant information. There we go. And we'll do finances, control structure, decision making, and we'll do regulatory capacity, and then bargaining between parties. We'll see what happens. It is a nice website. It is actually very sleek looking, okay? Although it does make drugs look like, candy, which is a little... Drugs are not really meant to be candy, but it is a nice looking website. Although this part bothers me. The fact that it's serif font. Okay? If like people who... I don't know if people need to hear this, but serif font is when there's like little edges on font, like little like edges on the edges of like on the ends of letters and stuff, and that's for print. It helps your eyes when you're looking at print, but on digital screens, this shit destroys your brain. It's just like there's a reason we made non-serif font. Like if I switch this to Arial, okay, that's much easier to read. Okay, it's just not even close, dude. Like, what are we doing?
God, you're so particular. It's hilarious. It's
But we'll see. We'll see exactly what. Last time I did this, by the way, there was like zero information. Like literally a zero information. Yeah. Many deal terms are not public. As of June 15, 2026, the public record supports a restrained characterization. Trump RX is a federal price discovery and coupon referral program tied to a broader Trump administration MFN, which has no information on it either. Core function lets patients search discounted prescription drugs. Financial model, mostly pay out of pocket. Means you won't get these fucking deals. Because when you go look at this, and you look at out of pocket price, you pay the same amount. Okay. It's like lying on his own website. It's built by the National Design Studio, which is a White House entity, who I'm assuming, I wonder who that is. Is that like... Joe Gebbia, the Airbnb co-founder. Okay, so Trump just gave him a bunch of money to build this stupid fucking website. Personally, that's great. It's just so much fucking corruption, bro.
No, it really is crazy. It's like the same fucking. It's just all the oligarchs getting together and going, like, here's a bunch of money.
There's a guy in my chat, Swolabolo. It is crazy. $300 billion. Okay, think about this. How many 747s do you think Obama would need to send $300 billion again? How many pallets do you think he would need?
That's wild.
Yeah, Trump's main criticism, right, Bryce? Obama. How many Obama pallets? He's like, Obama sent $1.7 billion in I think it was a 757. It didn't need to be. It could have been a 747. He's fucking retarded.
Pretty good impression. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, regulatory capacity. Strong in threat posture. I think this is from, I think it's using memory right here. So strong in threat posture. I've actually talked to AI about Trump's Trump RX before, obviously, and I think it's using memory there to say that. That's because I was asking some specific ideas about like how, what we're kind of talking about, how much of a threat it is if there's no internal, what's what I'm looking for, accountability, right? So there's no anti-kickback rules, like it said. I remember discussing that with it. There's a lot of litigation risk, but anyways. Administration trades access, so the bargaining model. This is the part that is kind of like fascist corporatism. So the executive branch can trade access, which means if you're a drug company that does something wrong in Trump's eyes, he can just take you off the fucking website, which is why. You know what I mean? Like we can't have entire company and life-saving drugs be like.
You talked about the Epstein files.
Yeah.
That's all made up liberal propaganda. You're off the fucking site.
Yeah, you didn't give enough money to this thing I told you to do, or like you didn't pay enough money to this politician to vote something or vote against this way. And we don't want companies and life-saving medication to be like beholden to like one dude's fucking really fragile ego. That's for fucking sure. And
oh, dude, it's crazy.
Apparently, he has these presidential deal medications now. I was just looking at that, which are highlighted medications that he's giving presidential deals on. I honestly have no idea what that means. They weren't unfrozen Molotov. The assets were assets that we froze after the Shah was overthrown, and the plan was once the Ayatollah was gone, or at least in the JCPOA. Over time, we would unfreeze more of those assets and give access to Iran so they could buy things like iPhones and stuff. And Iran, the plan, at least for the JCPOA, was once they realize how good the market is for certain items, they would, like the Saudis, where they're like, oh, we like Rolls Royces. Maybe we're not going to be horrible. I mean, we're going to be horrible regimes in our own countries, but it's a strong geopolitical move when you can like get their population obsessed with like real goods on a market. So the assets were not unfrozen. Most of them are in Europe, by the way, not like in the US. It is not taxpayer money. Although that's not true. Molotov, I think you're mixing things up. There's $25 billion of assets that are unfrozen, and the $300 billion is a fund between the Gulf states and the U.S. So that is actually taxpayer
So-
money.
That's crazy though. So like that money is going to be generated through either bonding or I'm curious if, because I know that the IMF and the way that the World Bank works is they'll issue loans to these other countries that we kind of fuck up to rebuild usually at like really bad interest rates.
IMF would
But
never
do you
would
think
never
they-
fucking issue a loan to Iran like that. The regime is
That's the thing,
yeah.
is because Iran is kind of separated from like our banking system, isn't it?
all. Well, the other thing is like the fact that the U.S. just lost a war against Iran means that the debt, right? Debt is foundationally only as important or only as effective as the enforcement of it.
Holder.
As the enforcement of it. So
Yeah.
if we
That's the
cannot
enforcement. If
force
you can't
them,
force anything on that.
yeah, if we can't force
then
them to
yeah,
pay
we
it
can't.
back, like take over the country, like an African country, we easily can. Then
Yeah.
there's no
We can't-
there's no
we can't
reason to give the
guarantee
debt.
it's secure.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
fact that they just lost, they won a war just now is kind of like a bad. The IMF will not give them money to rebuild because they don't know if they can like force them to pay it back.
Actually get their money.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Thanks, Molotov. 15
We're the
15
IMF
streams is good.
enforcers. Why we here?
One of my
We're the
chatters
IMF
is on a 15 stream streak. Thanks, Molotov.
15 streams.
Yeah, dude, that's good.
Oh, like jumping in your streams?
Yeah, he's watched 15 streams in a row. That's fucking gnarly.
Yeah, that's wild.
How do
Like,
I
I watch like 3 of your streams, but
how do
you
I
know,
how do I
still
reward you?
listen to them, like,
how do I reward you as open? Is that a thing I can do? I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out, Molotov. All right, so to go
the way they do it, I don't know.
to go further, the fact sheet says Trump RX began with AstraZeneca, really big company, Eli Lilly, everyone knows that,
Yeah.
Pfizer,
Big Tylenol, right?
and insulin. Eli Lilly is really popular for like insulin. Patients with valid prescriptions could access discounts through printable, downloadable coupons, or manufacturers' channels integrated into the site. So this is actually a worthless website. I found that out before because the truth is that this is not lowering the cost of goods. This is literally just using the manufacturer coupon that already exists if you qualify. So you have to claim the coupon and then you have to qualify for the coupon, just like every other. So this is really just a website that helps people find the drugs, but that's also kind of weird, right? Because drugs really shouldn't be taken because you see them individually. Like they should be recommended by a doctor. It's just
Correct.
backwards.
Like you're never going in and like, yeah, that makes sense. It's weird. Are they marketing to the end user or are they marketing to
they're marketing to the end user.
like
End user.
medical organizations?
Well,
Okay.
behind the scenes, Trump is making deals with companies through this website, except we have no access to them, which is not good.
So you don't really know totally exactly what's happening there,
we have zero clue.
other than the fact that
We have zero
it's
clue.
government
Yeah.
government involvement in basically picking people that are going to be able to post their drugs on this website at some point.
It's up to Trump's administration right now.
Yeah.
So, like
I see.
here it says the site itself displays a 400 million plus save for Americans claim, right?
Oh my god, I almost crashed.
Which is a which is a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Where is this coming from? Like it asks, I have no idea. You know, it also says this again. 1,000% more than in any other country. This is unacceptable. It's got a lot of like fluff to it, but the truth is
Yeah.
it doesn't actually have any. There's no way to actually claim any of this. And then there's like a little, on the bottom, there's like a little bit of a, here's some facts about the website. And when I went through this last time, it was pointless, right? Like, what is Trump RX? A website that lists discounted drugs. Okay. These discounts are displayed as presidential deals. The prices on generic drugs listed on Trump RX are displayed using private pharmacy discount aggregators. So it's not even something special. You're unique to Trump RX. It just uses the same prices that the the aggregate pharmaceutical companies have themselves. And I mean, that's it. How do I get my Trump? Can I get Trump RX prices at my local pharmacy? Some presidential deals are available through coupons, and these deals are, again, using aggregate discount, pharmacy discount things that the companies already have. At this time, Trump RX discounted pricing is available only for cash paying patients. That's very weird.
That's weird.
It's weird.
It's kind of just like this sketchy thing that's like come into existence. I think maybe so. Like, you know, we're talking Milton Friedman again because of that stupid book that I've read. And you know, I'm not as versed in all these things as you when it comes to the economic principle. Again, politicians, and this is where Trump really gets people on, is it's all intention. It's not incentive, right? So like he could create this website to say that his intention is to lower prices and to get people a better deal. And just because the website exists, he looks like he's doing something as well. Like, you know, it might just be one of those things where it's like, okay, well, let me paint myself the light to combat these high drug prices, but not really actually do anything. In fact, make things worse at the same time. Like, I'm not really going to talk, like, it's pretty bad when you're going to end up increasing the price of the cost of goods for everyone across the board. But then you have this website, it's like, we're working on it. Like, we're getting it done. Other politicians don't do anything. Look, you could look at my website that looks really nice. You know what I mean? Like, It could be one of those things. Intention versus incentive type stuff. Politicians live on intention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you think that could also be part of it? Like, it's like, let's construct this shit.
I honestly,
and then find a way to scam everyone.
I honestly,
they just want to get money out of it.
I don't. It's really just another way in which control can be kind of exerted because Trump, he doesn't know how to like get anything done through Congress. Okay, like no one's writing bills right now, even though they have the ability to do so. No one is like capable of writing anything. He doesn't have an administration that can even do that either because he doesn't have people who are knowledgeable and understand the system right now. He has people who just say yes. So
just say yes. Just suck his cock.
So Trump,
yeah,
even if he
100%.
wanted to, I think right now, let's just say he wanted to like make Trump RX, but call it, you know, something real, like an actual portal that's designed around helping people lower the cost of drugs. He would need people who knew how to write legislation and direct people in Congress to write legislation, and he does not have that. It's just not there right now. So this is kind of his only method too.
But this is the thing, you don't really, and that's not really how government operates anymore, which is really irritating because obviously writing a bill is great, but you know, most law comes out of these regulatory organizations, and he has appointed some pretty fucking shady people.
It does
to these
not
regulatory
actually. So
organizations
the regulatory agencies recommend laws. They don't actually write it.
No, they
recommend
interpret and enforce laws.
They
Yeah,
well they
but
have
do
wiggle
actually
room, right?
create
They
regulation.
have wiggle room.
They create regulation, and actually there's a lot of famous case law around this, but there's a guy named Judge Black or Blackman, I don't remember, it's really old,
Blackman.
where they talk about the three different ways in which government and the executive branch operates in tandem with Congress. It's either with Congress's intent, in a gray area of Congress's intent, and against Congress's intent. But, you know, like, basically, like, those are the three levels of, like, what he could be doing and the strength of those things when they're challenged. But these in this, I think it's called I don't remember how you say it in law, in this progression of a law, the development of this type of law when it comes to executive powers and regulatory organizations.
It's an inference. They're making an inference, right? Because like this is kind of the same thing as like C8, you know, like DuPont chemicals, or like food dyes. Like there's some regulation to make companies use certain food dyes, right? But then they change one molecule. They change one molecule, and now all of a sudden, you know, they can still use the fucking food dye. So there is a little bit of wiggle room on judicial inference to like help the FDA or like the CDC or all these, you know, different agencies be able to still continue to do like execute the laws, because a lot of this, we can't have Congress come in every single day and vote on like tiny molecule changes.
It's exactly. It's an expeditious process where,
Yeah,
as writing a bill every time something changes and then getting it approved by everybody is
it's impossible.
absolutely outrageous.
It's impossible.
Correct. So that's why they have this. But you also have to understand that from a legal standpoint, how do you challenge the regulation if it comes up?
It's difficult. It's definitely a hard, like a
It's
process
difficult.
that's hard.
And
Yeah.
even if you do find the harm, because obviously something has to cause you harm in order for you to bring your court. That's number one. Number two, the government has to allow you
Hmm.
to sue them, which is annoying, right? But in order to actually challenge the regulation, when you get to court, the courts say, well, we're judges, we're attorneys, we can't be experts in this field. We give deference to this organization, and therefore, even if the law or the regulation is invalid and out of tandem with Congress, because of the nature of why they exist, we're basically going to just say, well, they have it right.
Yeah.
You know what I
So
mean?
I feel like
Which is crazy.
if we were gonna fix this issue, it would probably have to begin with Congress detailing out a better way for agencies to accommodate this. More
Yeah.
independent, like attorney generals, not attorney generals, but inspector generals, in which they can have their own like experts. Maybe if it's like CDC related, they can have their own infectious disease, individual or team leader, and then they could balance the argumentation, right? But we simply think that like any oversight through the government right now is bad, but uniquely suited to probably be the best person to handle this would be if there's a problem in which the courts can't determine whether or not the CDC is overstepping its bounds as it relates to like some peculiar, disease or like
Very nuanced.
yeah, then
okay.
the inspector general, if they had their own like division of independent experts that's relative to the field, they could go into court and argue, right? But like you said, right now it's like lawyers go in and they go, I mean, we don't really care if like a coal factory produces pollution. I don't really know what that means. All I know is my client's fucking money is not as good. And then an EPA guy comes in and goes, yeah,
There's been a harm
but
to
like
me.
here's some
Correct.
atmospheric chemistry, and then it doesn't go away. It goes into Tennessee from Kentucky, and then they hate it and they're dying because of it. And then the inspector general could have its own division of people who are experts at atmospheric chemistry, or at least that's a lot. Like we can't just keep going and going, but we don't have anything like that right now. It's just the judge has to go, okay, that was pretty convincing. What's your argument again? And the lawyer goes, money.
Yeah. No, 100%. Money, damages, correct. Damages. There'd have some sort of damages or some sort of harm done to you, and there's only certain things that the court can even really do. Like, they can't generally force people to do things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's weird, but like they have to put monetary numbers on things too, so it has to be quantifiable.
Yeah.
And also but the point being is, I think that when it comes down to it, we kind of need to separate the executive. I don't think that the executive should have so much oversight into each of these organizations. Like the Fed kind of operates better. If you think about it, the independence that's there because of Jerome Powell kind of made it so we didn't just fucking get bullied down into lower rates and increase inflation even more, right? That would have been really irresponsible.
You want it to be more
Trump hated
independent?
him for it.
You want it to be more independent?
Yeah, so I think that some of these organizations need to be a little bit more independent and beholden to the populace.
So this is why
Right?
my
There should be some sort
Molotov
of,
in my
level
chat.
of industry.
Molotov in my chat just now. I did see your comment. The right did have a really big problem with the idea of unelected bureaucrats, but I want to address that a little bit, Molotov. This is kind of similar to what my friend Bryce is talking about, at least tangentially. Okay, so the entirety of like the EPA and all of these agencies, they are appointed, like their directors are appointed by the president, and then the people at them are not really appointed by any government, any government. The director can create and execute ways in which they hire people, but the truth is that a lot of these agencies are like specialized organs, and being able to appoint the people to them through like uniquely Republican individuals or like Republican processes wouldn't really work. So the fact that they're unelected bureaucrats is kind of irrelevant. What probably would be a better way to fix this issue is kind of what my friend Bryce is saying, which is they need to be more independent from the government entirely. So the director even
Correct.
needs to be probably one step away from the government's, the executive administration that then talks about how to work with the directors. So the director itself could be completely independent, like the Federal Reserve, and then the president can still appoint their own administrative director who then works with the director in a way. And then there's a panel of people across each like independent agency maybe that is again uniquely independent that could vote in their director. But there's problems with that too. It's just unelected bureaucrats. I get what you're saying, but what an independent thing like the Federal Reserve might be a better way to address the issue than just expecting us to like somehow appoint these people properly.
Yeah, I really think too, a lot of it is more about political favors than it is actual expertise when it comes to the head of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
When you really think about
A lot of them are
somebody
made
like,
with the companies they're supposed to regulate, right? So that's
well, this is Kennedy. I mean, you think
Yeah.
about like the fact that he just kind of brought in a large voting base, and then now all of a sudden he's the director of Health and Human Services. But there are honestly so many people that are better qualified for that position, experts in the field. But he's a politician. He worked his way in because he did some political favors, right? Like
Mhm.
he was actually monumental in the support of Trump campaign. Or Tulsi Gabbard, right? Don't get me wrong, she's a little more qualified because she's military and everything else.
She's weird.
But at the end of the day,
She's
I
weird,
just
though.
really think that having politicians in charge of organizations that are specialized organs doesn't really solve the problem. I think that there's more of a honestly, kind of like what we were talking. It kind of relates to what we were talking about having like some sort of special skill and when it comes to altruism. But really, in reality, it should be separated. There should be some level of protection against those things being changed up so radically and easily, since those types of organizations have the expeditious ability to create these regulations based on a need, right? Like if something happens quickly, those are the organizations. If they're politically motivated, we're going to see a lot more issues and things being slowed up when they need to act correctly and not be beholden. It's like judges, right? Like if you were to, in the places that judges are elected, they're definitely more likely to make a ruling or do things based on their political following's beliefs rather than what the law is, right?
Okay. My theory of democracy goes into this a little bit too, right? The reason I just talked about this pretty recently, but the reason we don't have judges and lawyers as jurors, right, is because we need institutions to be serving the people, not the other way around, right? And institutions, no matter what it is, it can be the most specialized academic, institution on the planet that is good at what they do, but it is a self-reinforcing thing. So we can't have institutions reinforcing negative feedback loops within themselves. Like we can't have them completely control themselves, or because they get taught stuff, and then because they get taught stuff, they get like institutionalized in a way, right? And there needs to be some sort of external pressure to reject that if need be. Oh, he just died. That was my friend Bryce, by the way, Reclusi. He's been a friend of mine for like, I don't know, half my life actually. A very long time. Very long time. All right, so now I'm going to cover the deal. He's at the airport now. I'm going to cover the deal. Yeah, I'd be down. Finish marketing exams. Hey, what did you think of my my little democracy theory, by the way? So I don't know, maybe you can describe this feeling to me, but it feels like I'm kind of onto something. But then at the same time, like I'll wake up in the middle of the night and go, what the fuck did I just do? I just spent like 40 pages in like 4 days straight, like creating a metaphysical fucking democracy will theory. Like, what am I doing? This fucking dumbest thing I've ever done. It's like a duality, bro. For sorry, years and years. That's kind of that feeling hurts. I definitely felt a little weird. I was like, this theory's made up, is what I thought to myself the other day. I was like, it's literally just made up, bro. What the fuck am I doing? It was funny as fuck. Really? Fuck off. Fucking pedal. That sounds nice. That sound good? How does it sound on stream? We can do A flat major.
Okay.
Energy.
So I saw you were talking about the Iran deal. Unfortunately, I didn't catch some of it because I was eating lunch. But
I haven't started yet, actually. I was gonna pull up
no,
the
you were saying
JCPOA
you
deal.
were saying something about the Trump administration, and you were saying that the Trump administration wasn't democratic. So I thought you were talking about the Iran deal.
Democratic? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Sorry, what was that? You cut out for a second.
Democratic? What do you mean?
Didn't you say that the Trump administration was behaving in a way where they were not listening to the congressional branch?
Oh, the Trump RX is like a unique, not public, just market manipulation. You know, it's essentially like a pathway to fascist corporatism in the way that it doesn't really allow for bargaining because Trump can unilaterally just eliminate companies from this website, right? And it's on paper it looks like it's a bargaining website to help companies, but in reality, if you don't do what Trump says, there's nothing to stop him from eliminating you. So it's unilaterally a mechanism in which he can use to politically align companies, right? Which is not good if you're going to do like a bargaining website like this.
Are you saying that's undemocratic though?
It would be undemocratic, but it's not like the companies get a say in being eliminated. I don't know if democratic is the right word though. It doesn't really make sense to me in this regard.
So anyway, about the Iran update, I was just curious what your perspective was in general.
It's bad. A few things. So, one, this shows that Iran won. Just decidedly so. It also means that Iran is going to know the fact that they can shut down the strait at any time and we won't do anything, meaningful. So that kind of signals that Iran is now like one of the strongest powers in the Middle East, even if they really aren't on paper. And second, it kind of shows that this deal probably won't happen because Israel and Netanyahu already came out and said this like an hour ago, 2 hours ago. Dear Israel, I have been working for Iran for a long time. I will stand by it, even with an agreement, without an agreement. Israel remains. In less or more words, I feel like this is Netanyahu going, I don't give a fuck about your deal. I'm just throwing that out there. So the problem here is if Israel strikes Iran again, Iran already knows that they can just close the strait. And we can't do anything about it. So this deal is already on thin ice. And then the final problem is that the amount of money that Iran is getting from this deal is an absurd amount of money. $300 billion in a fund that's funded by the Gulf states, and we don't know how much of it is us, but it's a lot of money, I'm assuming. I mean, the Gulf states don't have that much money to just fucking throw into a fund. We don't either, but I guess he thinks we do. And then $25 billion of assets that were frozen are being unfrozen. So the JCPOA, which was not designed by Obama, by the way. He says it's Obama's deal. It was mainly written by people, the 7 countries, right? Obama was just the negotiator because one of the dudes in Iran really liked him. That's it. Literally, Obama barely had anything to do with making the deal. Most of it's EU sanctions, right, that are being unfrozen. So, like it says here, EU will terminate all provisions of EU regulation, blah, blah. That's mainly what the JCPOA is about. It's about EU sanctions and then like a integration of the US, because we also had a lot of money in Iran when they were controlled by proxy US, right, during the Shah. So the point is, let's see, billion, that gets mentioned in here. I don't think it does. But the $1.7 billion, okay, is essentially
Yeah.
the amount that Iran, that was the total amount of frozen assets that were going to be unfrozen during the JCPOA deal. So $1.7 billion. So this agreement that Trump is doing is $25 billion in unfrozen assets, plus $300 billion in a fund to reconstruct Iran, which, let's think about this. Is there any way we can ensure that Iran actually spends this money on the people of Iran to reconstruct anything? The answer is no.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bad move. I mean, so part of the problem is you're familiar, right, with the knowledge problem in economics, right, about the distribution of resources.
Knowledge
and
disparity. Yeah,
effect.
that's Mises. I went and read a lot more
Yeah, and
Mises.
Hayek as well.
Yeah.
Both of them, but
But I don't
they
know
were
how that's
saying,
relevant, though.
I think, well, so um the it's relevant in the sense that I think when we're talking about the knowledge disparity, there's a problem with regards to giving foreign aid to countries to do nation building, because the problem is the government doesn't really know where to allocate resources if there's not a proper market price signaling.
Okay, so this is not true in this case. We attacked infrastructure in Iran. We blew up buildings. We blew up roads. All of that is easily identifiable, and the pricing for that is easily handled. So the problem here, though, is getting the enforcement, not the knowledge. So when we give money to Iran, like the JCPOA has extremely strict guidelines where we unfreeze assets, but they're not allowed to, get like additional heavy water reactors for 15 years. So they're not able to spend that money on something that could essentially enrich uranium further than the 6 whatever percent. It doesn't matter. The actual percentage isn't that important, right? But you get what I'm saying. This deal, I guarantee you, it's not going to have anything like this. And even if it did, there's no way to enforce it at all now, because Iran knows that they just want a war with us. They know that we can't go in. They know that we can't actually, go in and make sure that they spend the money on the proper thing. So it's not a knowledge problem. It's like they know exactly what the cost of buying new concrete would be to construct buildings or blah blah blah. The problem here
But
is
the
that
knowledge problem is not that.
it
The
is that your price signaling of markets is definitely well understood.
Well, no, it's not just the price signaling. It's also to signal where they should allocate the resources, like where should the buildings be built and where should the infrastructure be built, because we don't know where the population
It's
is.
buildings we already destroyed.
I know, but I'm saying we don't know if the population moved out of those buildings to other buildings.
That doesn't mean anything.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't. China builds buildings for entire fucking civilizations before they ever move in, and it's fine.
Well, that's a waste of resources.
It's not. It works out really well for China because they know that a lot of their society is agrarian. So when they do this construction, people come and they plan it out, and they're able to plan it out. So there's not a knowledge problem, especially with Iran. Iran knows, there might be an information problem on the needs of the people as it relates to the government, but this also could not be true if there was proper enforcement on how the money was spent. So when the IMF gives a bank loan to a country on behalf of, building infrastructure, right? The IMF would only do that if they knew that the enforcement was there. So because debt is only as meaningful as the enforcement, right? But right now, the problem is not that Iran, can't identify how to spend the money on infrastructure and concrete and buildings for the people that need it, because we blew it up. It's meant to like help reconstruct things we blew up. There's no knowledge problem there. The problem is that getting Iran to actually spend the money on that fucking thing is no longer there, because they just showed that they can literally close the strait and we can't do anything about it. So if we go, hey, you need to spend the money here, how do we make sure they do that without any force now? What are we going to bomb them again? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Molotov, the total amount of money, and hopefully this is going to sound insane because it is when I tell you this, okay? The total amount of aid that the United States has given Israel in totality over history is close to $400 billion. It's like $370 billion. This amount of money is almost 2% of that total over the entire history of U.S. aid to Israel. That's how much money we're talking about. It is fucking ridiculous, dude. Israel is definitely going to bomb them again. There's no way Israel's going to let this deal go through. It's already dead on arrival. I'm just pointing out that, like, yeah, it's a lot of money, man. Israel's aid, at least militarily, we barely give like $3 billion a year, and barely is like, that's a lot of money, man. But yeah, Israel's total aid over its history from the U.S. is like 365 billion. So Iran is apparently going to get 82% of that, 80% of that in one go. I don't even understand what our administration's doing, man. I have no idea what's going on. Doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. I mean, so do you think that, like, when analyzing the behavior of Iran in this circumstance in Israel, that game theory is relevant?
Yeah, of course it is. Game theory is kind of relevant for all of economics.
Well, the problem, I'm not super familiar with game theory. I know about like the idea that, like, basically rational actors try to maximize their potential, like,
I think I can help you. I think I can help you understand this a little bit easier. But markets in general, they only exist because society allows them to, right? They create them. They manufacture them, right? Yeah.
I guess.
So game theory. I pulled up a textbook, by the way, for this. I think you might enjoy this.
Can you share the screen? Can you share your screen?
Yeah, I can. I think I sent you my economics reading material textbook folder, right?
Yeah, but I unfortunately haven't gotten a lot of time recently.
No, you're fine. Just know that all of these ideas in books and textbooks that I've taken courses on, and then not only that, but just kind of gone further than what I actually was able to do. I've put them all in there. So there's a game theory textbook in here, and game theory in and of itself is essentially just acknowledging the fact that that markets have some sort of boundary to them. So in game theory, though, there's essentially like a zero-sum game. So for every action, there's like an equal outcome or respective action. So if you spend money, then you know how the economic saying of like someone spending is someone else's income. That is game theory in a nutshell. It is for every action you take, there's going to be a reciprocal outcome or action. And the decision problem is big in this, so things like knowledge and decision are really important here. So I'm just going to go to chapter 1 here so we can just read the definition together again, okay? And we'll go to do here. Blah, 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 blah. Because it can get really complicated. But at least for the basics here, game theory provides a framework based on the construction of rigorous models that describe situations of conflict and cooperation between rational decision makers. So this means wherever there's a situation of conflict and cooperation, which means everything, any market in existence, that has rational decision makers. And rational is defined above, right? In which we're talking about people who have agency within some market. So that's essentially all it is. But go on.
You put out for a second. You said, what is the definition of rational?
I'm pretty sure just agents within a market that are assumed to be self-interested actors. Kind of
Well,
like
that's actually complicated because I think you've said you've read the book, but there's research by people like Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky with regards to prospect theory and psychology, which show that basically when we make decisions, we use heuristics which are not necessarily in our best interest all the time.
no, they are. When we use heuristics, you're talking about thinking fast, thinking slow. I've read the book. So Daniel Kahneman
Yeah.
is an economist who describes when people they have two different modes when they live through life, right? They have a quick heuristic thinking, which ultimately is to maximize one's payoff. Even if the problem is that heuristics can often be a pattern recognition that is wrong, but it is rational behavior where you choose actions depending on one's payoff. Except I think what you're trying to say is that this is saying like an Austrian idea where, or sorry, an anti-Austrian, like a neoclassical idea where people are 100% rational actors with all the information. That's not what this is saying. This is defining rational behavior. So individuals are expected to act on self-interest to maximize one's payoff as the default is all it is. So when you, when you go buy a car, right? Energy, like if I was going to go buy a car, the neoclassical would say, you look up the best cars, you find out all the information, you become a perfectly rational individual, and you buy the BMW. The Daniel Kahneman format is, your parents have a BMW, it's nice, you buy the BMW. Okay? You don't know why, you don't really have all the information, you just know that people like the BMW. So that's still technically you choosing a BMW, maximizing your own payoff. You think it is still the best car for you, or else you wouldn't have spent money on it. It is not perfectly rational, though.
Well, yeah, when I say it's not rational, I'm not saying that you don't intend for it to have a payoff. I'm just saying it's not rational in the sense that it's not the most reliable way of making decisions.
Okay, so in game theory, rational decision making, this is why it's not antithetical, why I'm rejecting what you said earlier, is because in game theory, in capitalism in general, man, it's based on incentives. One of the strongest things about capitalism is the incentive of self-interest, right? And this is based on that. We expect people within markets, when they are when they are in situations of conflict and cooperation, like it says in the game theory definition, to maximize one's own payoff or some form of payoff. That's all it means there. We wouldn't expect people to buy drugs that kill them faster if they're sick. We wouldn't expect people to, buy things that would kill them instead of, or like maybe pay for something that's going to break, or buy a car that's going to fail if their kid's driving it, right? We expect people to do things in a very self-interested way that is natural, is all it means.
Yeah. Okay, well then if that's the case, then that would say that is rational. But I'm saying even under that definition of rationality, well, they might be rational actors. They're not rational in the neoclassical sense.
Exactly. So this actually ties into what Reclusi's saying right now with the prisoner's dilemma. When we say the fundamental definition of game theory as rational decision makers does not mean they're perfectly rational, Reclusi. So the point actually in the prisoner's dilemma too is that we actually can predict what the prisoner's dilemma outcome is. Even if it is an irrational decision, it is done in self-interest at the end of the day, right? Because you can't trust the other individual in the prisoner's dilemma, so everyone chooses one option. We would expect that because they're trying to maximize their own payoff here. But game theory is complex. It goes more and more deep. I think what Energy just said, Reclusi, is the most important thing. Neoclassical economics of game theory assumes that rational decision makers are perfect. It assumes that, like, when you buy a car, you literally did all your research. You have all the information. You're literally you are buying it because you are an informed, perfect, rational actor, which is fucking psychotic.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, have you you said you're if I remember correctly, I did read in your thing you sent me one of the things that talks about probability theory and like Bayesian statistics.
Hmm.
But right now with Bayesianism, there's something called the replicability crisis,
There's
right?
two fields. There's the Bayesianist and there's the what are they called?
frequentist.
Frequentist, yeah. So I but
So-
both of
so-
those people, they both think that Bayesian statistics is real. They just they use the priors differently. So the frequentalists
Yeah,
do
but
not
that's what I
use
was
the
gonna
priors.
say is that there's a concept called p-hacking where you have the prior be set so high that no matter what evidence is, you're gonna have a prior that it won't change your belief no matter what the evidence is. And
What is the prior
and
based
this
on
is
though?
well, the prior is for subjective Bayesians is based on subjective belief.
No, it
And
it
so
must
this
be
is-
have already happened. The prior is based on the fact that it's already happened before.
But in the subjective interpretation of probability from the Bayesian perspective, they think that
You don't just get to make it
you
up.
can set the prior.
You don't just get to make it up. So
Well, I
it
thought
has
that's
to be
the
something that
subjective Bayesian.
it has to be something that probably like has already happened in probability.
Okay. But anyway, so there's a statistician named Deborah Mayo, and she says that there's a problem of like falsificationism, right? And Karl Popper like talked about falsifiability.
Karl Popper is
like
very
being
against Bayesian statistics, so I would imagine. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
she's also very critical of it because Deborah Mayo, she's a student of Karl Popper.
he can't
and he- and
refute
there's-
the entire idea, though, right? You know that he just.
Well, he
it's about-
can't
it's-
do all of the statistics.
I know
but the
it's
reason
about
he's critical
rejecting
of
the use of the
Bayesianism-
prior, though, but the actual function itself
Yeah.
is still necessary.
Yeah, no, he's not denying the mathematical use if you accept the conditional probability.
Mhm.
He's denying the way the priors are set, because the priors are set in a way that is not in accordance with his philosophy.
Yeah, but it is split on this. It's not like it's not really an easy. There's not really an easy answer here, man. I actually don't know
Yeah, but I think
either which way. I'm
but I
not going to
think
act like
Popper
I
is
do.
right
So.
about this. But the reason I think Popper is right about this is because I think the predictions you make should be risky. They should be easily falsifiable and easily proven wrong. Because if you can't prove it wrong, then there's a real issue of replicability crisis, right? Because science is
I mean,
based on the
you
idea.
the other day we're talking about how consciousness cannot be reduced, right? You agree with me? Consciousness can't be reduced down to simple biological processes, right? We can.
Yeah.
I remember you saying that evolution biologically seems to help the emergent quality or the property come out, but can we replicate any of that when it comes to? Is that falsifiable? No.
Well, I actually don't know because like if you provided a neuroscientific hypothesis that showed that you could have brain functions that demonstrate certain things with regards to consciousness,
Can you reduce it down
maybe
to
it
that?
would
No,
I don't. I mean, no,
you can't, because
I don't think so.
we can look at how brains have, electrical impulses, right? And then we can make correlative claims and even almost causal inference claims. You touch this part of the brain, it essentially like invokes this memory. But the very fact that someone can live and actually be missing that part of the brain, but be totally normal, is evidence against that fact,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's complicated because neuroscience also a lot of it is really philosophical in the sense that it's
So
dealing with questions about
non-falsifiable is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's why it's not. It's why it's not really scientific.
I mean, a lot of mathematics can get a little bit philosophical when it gets down to its smallest level,
Yeah.
right? So,
Well, mathematics isn't scientific either. Mathematics is mathematics. It's not science.
so
Right, but
Karl
what-
Popper's
well,
idea
what I-
of inductivism and falsifiability, the allegiance he has to the idea that you should be able to falsify things empirically and in a replicable way is why exactly is that necessary when we can think of many
so for
ways in which we can't do
science,
that?
The reason I think that's necessary for science is because the whole premise of the scientific method is that you create an explanatory theory that explains some phenomena you observe, and you can prove it wrong. So that way, if it is wrong, you can develop a better theory in the future. So in the context of science,
Okay,
it's important to have the ability to grow your knowledge.
that didn't answer my question though.
Well, but that you asked why it's so important. I'm saying in the context of the scientific method, that's why it's important. So that way you can grow your knowledge over time.
But Karl Popper's wrong, because a lot of things we cannot, without new physics, reduce down to falsifiability. So if we just treated everything
Well-
like only falsifiability is what we have to believe in, then we would have real problems understanding the world.
Well, I think you're misunderstanding what Popper is saying. He's saying that scientific theories have to be falsifiable, but for non-scientific theories like mathematics, they can be unfalsifiable.
That's just a label problem then, right?
Well, no, because I would say that that's the demarcation between science and non-science is falsifiability.
That's a label problem then. Right. It's not really a.
Yeah, I mean,
It's just
in a
labeling
sense.
them. He's upset with the labeling then. Is that it?
Yeah, he would say that if it's not falsifiable, it should not be labeled science.
Well, I don't really care about the label that much.
Well, it's important because we have different areas of knowledge. We have philosophy, we have science, we have art, we have mathematics, and being able to distinguish between them is important.
Okay, so even the most inductive, falsifiable parts of science inevitably are going to come down to some unfalsifiable, reclassification of the philosophy of science, right?
Well, for example, like take gravity. You could falsify gravity if you could drop something that has mass and it flew up.
No, you
in
can't.
the
That's why
sky.
it's ultimately a theory.
Yes, you could, because if let's say you let go of a pencil and then it flew up instead of flying down to the earth, then that would falsify gravity. It would falsify Einstein's general
Gravity
relativity.
is not falsifiable because the truth is energy
Yes.
that we can do it 99 bajillion times to infinity, but the truth is that until we understand the process of it, not just the relationship between contingent things on it, and the truth is we can't say for certain. We just can reproduce it a bunch as of right now.
Yeah, so but I'm saying what would falsify the idea that gravity exists, what would prove it wrong is that if you let go of something, if it flew up in the sky.
Okay, so what is gravity? Can you describe gravity just because we can
So-
describe the relationship between a pencil and it's flying up into the sky? Like, can you describe that
So-
is gravity? In the
so
same way,
gravity is-
energy, that you can describe the pen.
So I understand gravity to be
Energy,
the
one sec. I'm
when-
gonna ask it again. Can you explain what gravity is in the same way you can describe the marker right now, not using the fact that when I drop it, it falls? I want you to explain gravity like the explanation of the marker. Not just the relationship between
I don't think I
things that point to what gravity is.
I don't think I could because gravity
Okay.
is the relation.
I mean, that's a claim in and of itself, isn't it?
Well, but Einstein, when you're talking about general relativity, what it is that mass causes space-time curvature, which causes bodies of mass to attract each other.
So why does that disposition happen though?
Relation.
Why do I don't care about the relationship between, when I push a water bottle, you can describe me pushing and enacting force on it all day, but is that going to describe me?
Well, that's because the space-time like curves.
But why?
That's the reason. Well, the reason space-time. Well, what the same? I mean, ultimately, that is. What do you mean? Why? Why does space-time curve? Because mass causes it to curve.
Mass. Yeah, but like, why does this disposition to curve space-time happen when there's more matter in a dense place? Don't describe
no.
the actual thing happening, right? Don't describe the actual relationship of how space-time curves with mass. Why does it actually curve when matter is condensed into a small place?
Yeah, I don't know. Like that I don't know.
So this is why we can't just definitively say that the theory of gravity is 100% true, and why nothing in science is 100% true.
Well, that's where you're agreeing with falsifiability. You're agreeing with the idea that it can't be 100% proven.
Maybe. As so far, it seems like it can't.
Yeah. Exactly. It can't be 100% proven. You're agreeing with that.
Karl Popper would say it needs falsifiability.
Exactly. It has to be able to prove it wrong.
Okay, can you prove what I just said wrong? No.
Well, you didn't make a. I don't know. You asked a question. You didn't make a claim, so I can't prove a question wrong.
The theory of gravity, is it falsifiable at its core?
Yes.
Well, the theory, I guess, does describe the relationship between the things. So I guess we can say that the theory itself is falsifiable in a way. But even then,
Yeah.
because we don't know what gravity is, per se, or why it does what it does, the theory of gravity is ultimately binded to something else, which is the actual thing that we're talking about, right?
Are you arguing about the tug be like the grounding argument for like why?
I'm not
why
arguing
these
that per se.
metaphysical-
I am Tugby presents like a grounding theory for the relationship in a natural world, or in the natural world, right? I'm not arguing his strong grounding theory. I'm simply pointing out the same question that he does make before he does it, I guess. And most metaphysicists now that I've read, thanks to Reclusi, they all have different theories on how to describe that relationship too. But the truth is they all start with the same hypothesis. Why does it happen? What is it, right? Correct?
So I'm trying to think, how do I respond to this?
Like here, let me give you another way.
I
So
guess,
the sun provides, light for Earth, and light allows for life to form, right? So we can describe a few relationships there. One, life on Earth requires energy from the sun to exist. Let's just say that. It's more complex than that, but you get the idea. So we have a relationship between light from the sun and the outcome of life. And in a way, that could be similar to how space-time curves, how mass can curve space-time, right? So there's a relationship there that we can describe. So we've now established two different, an analogy using two different things and processes to describe a relationship. Now, if I asked you, but what is the sun? You'd be able to tell me exactly what the sun is. Well, it's a fusion reaction of deuterium, helium 2, 1, 2, and then deuterium, tritium 1, 3, and 4, right? Or helium 1, 3, and 4, and then in a fusion way, right? We can now describe exactly what the sun is. So with gravity, though, how the fuck do we do that?
I don't know. I actually I'm not. I learned about Einstein's general relativity in school, and
Well,
I'm
his
interested in the different
general
theories
theory
of
of
it.
relativity is like a description of the light, interacting with stuff on the Earth. It's a relationship question, right?
Yeah. Well, it's about the relationship between mass and curvature of space-time, basically.
Yeah. So it's a relationship assessment. It's not actually telling you what it is, though. So there is a deeper question there, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so if that's the case, then I don't know if there is anything beyond the relationship that we can explicate. Like in terms of the philosophy of science, can we explicate beyond the relationships, or
Let's
if
read
someone...
Reclusi's comment really fast. Literature on laws of nature is extremely vast and complex. That is fucking 100% true. I personally think we speak of gravity as this extra thing in the world that governs how objects behave. I'm more inclined to suggest that objects have underlying properties. So am I now, after we read that paper, which dispose them to behave in certain ways. And we call said thing gravity. So like the disposition to attract. So there are underlying properties like mass, which dispose them to behave in certain ways, which we will call gravity here, right? I know it sounds like I'm saying the same thing, but it's not. I know what you're saying. We were all idiots talking about stuff above our pay grade. Yeah, but it's fun. So fuck you.
Yeah.
Also, what do you mean it works? Let's not question further.
basically-
What kind of Molotov? I wouldn't have expected you to be someone who gives up. What kind of shit is that? Dover? It's Jover, bro? Lame.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of there's also the problem of like infinite regress of like how do you justify that further? Because you can always ask why one more time,
Thank you. Thank you. I love you. Sorry, I was listening.
right? Because isn't there a problem of like if you ask why is there something, then you can always ask it again and then again and again, and you
Well,
get this
it's not
infinite
that
regress problem.
we aren't asking necessary universe, right? So it's not like we're placing gravity in an infinite regress right now. Also, Molotov's cool, reclusive. Molotov, I value his opinions a lot. I definitely think Molotov is a different contrary opinion or challenger in my chat compared to compared to like Jumbo or something like that. And Jumbo hopefully turns around. But this isn't like something we're placing in front of an infinite regress. So the very fact that we can't describe gravity like I just asked you to describe the sun is kind of explanation demanding, but it doesn't actually put a necessary universe tag on it. Like all of the strong grounding theories, like Tugby, which I presented in my God argument, the very fact that Tugby does not claim a necessary universe or like a God necessarily, his entire strong grounding theory is within nature itself. So it's not asking like, it's not the same question as like something for nothing or, you know, the great question that Aquinas asked. It's actually just saying that there's just real modal depth to the natural world. And modal here doesn't mean like mysterious or hidden or, you know, magical. It just means metaphysically prior, as in we are able to use our senses to see only something before the other disposition is done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, is this like a hierarchy of ontology, like a hierarchical ontology?
I don't ontological here, right? Would mean like would be a little bit of an ought claim, like they ought to behave this way, right?
No, no. Ontological means what exists.
I mean, yeah, that's. I mean, yeah, that's kind of. I mean, ontological
But
is going to use that claim though, right? Like the it ought to exist, right?
that's not what ontology means.
An ontological basis, right?
An ontological basis means that this is the reason that this other thing exists.
Yeah. Well, whoa. There's modal ontological arguments, and then there's like, one sec. I mean, it doesn't matter. We don't have to get bogged down in the meaning of ontological. Just explain it for me in a different way, in what you're describing it as.
Well, I'm just asking basically is are you saying from the Tugbeat argument that you're making about like this that there's a hierarchy of what exists where some things exist in
No,
a more
hierarchy
fundamental
implies
sense?
hierarchy. I mean, hierarchy I think can imply, it might be correct, but hierarchy can imply a cause, like something first. The truth is that in Tugby's work, he doesn't make that claim at all. There is a metaphysical
Okay.
priority, which can be hierarchical in a way of disposition. Orientation. So like your first person orientation, we have senses and we have instruments in which we can measure the world. Tugby's work is essentially saying that with all of those instruments in mind to measure the universe, one of these things is metaphysically prior. And that doesn't mean first in like an ontological way. Like it must exist prior. Yeah. So did I explain that correctly, Reclusive? Where it's not that it exists first, it's that it exists in like a measurable orientation, like a first-person orientation way. One is before the other, only within the orientation of our ability to see it with the instruments that we have.
Oh, well, in that case, then that's like that's kind of like the Thomas Nagel argument of like what is it like to see a bat? Like
Yeah,
what's it
correct.
like to be a bat? Where it's
Correct.
like, yeah.
It's modal logic, but it's within the natural world. That's actually the basis of my God argument, because if we can logically demonstrate, using an explanatory, and it's explanatory, then it really opens up Pandora's box of why, because there are lots of other things we can think of, right? Like the sphere and why it has the disposition to roll down a hill. We know because we look at round things and we look at flat things, and when they're on a grade, it rolls, but like, why the hell does it actually have the disposition to do that is a deeper question. And if we can logically demonstrate it in an explanatory way, then the whole point of my argument for God was the idea of like the brute force naturalist or the brute fact naturalist, where everything is explanatorily flat and it's all settled, becomes much more difficult to have, right? That was the whole point of my argument.
Oh yeah, I mean that's fine. I mean I agree with the Leibniz contingency argument that
I don't
basically
like
because
the Leibniz one because it asks too much. But the Preston Rasmussen one that I argued, the restricted explanatory principle, is really good. It's more contemporary. If you want, I can give you the book for
yeah,
it.
but the reason I think the contingency one from that is that I think it's true that if the universe is a contingent being and contingent beings require some sufficient explanation, then God must be a sufficient explanation for the universe.
But God can be impersonal here, right? It could just be. That's why in my definition I said the ultimate necessary underived ground. There's nothing derivative of it. But the funny thing about Tugby's work, okay? The reason I brought up his work again is because I noticed a subtle contingency argument within his work. So that was the real kicker for me, is he describes not a necessary being argument. He describes a contingency argument, though, within his framework of strong grounding theory. He doesn't say necessary God or being. He just says that mass is a constitutively necessary thing for gravity, which exists in virtue of, which is just metaphysically prior. It's just a fancy way to say metaphysically prior. And properties are metaphysically prior to us, but gravity exists in virtue of and is only fully grounded, as in becomes the disposition to actually have an effect on anything, is only fully grounded once mass is in place. And it creates a constitutive necessity and a constitutive sufficiency. So in a way, the property is, gravity is dependent. I'm getting this mixed up again, fuck. I want to make sure I don't fuck this up. While I go get that really fast, so I make sure I tell you the exactly right thing. The point is that there's a smuggled in contingency argument. So there's a necessary thing that must happen, like a dependent structure, for this disposition to happen. And that kind of gives more credence to the idea of contingency, even more so than we already see in the universe. It's really weird. That's the thing I was going for. I don't know if I said it properly in my debate because it's hard. It was hard. It was hard to argue. But, well, I mean, do you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I think I do. So if I understand you correctly, you're saying like it's not just why is there something rather than nothing. It's like why does these predispositions as relations exist when these things interact?
Yeah, and we can all logically explain them all with using science right now. And metaphysics is not science, but it is an attempt at using science in a way to explain the universe, right? It's unfalsifiable. So I pulled up actually the framework here, okay? So we have a smuggled in contingency argument. Yeah, my argument's a little bit different because Jordan Peterson, he likes to take the impersonal way, but then he wants to extract and project all of the personal Christian God and everything. I think that's primarily because he just wants an audience. And yeah, that guy was stupid. I do see the similarity. The problem here is that he puts an extremely causal chain. He says that God is like the ultimate value structure in which everything else is ultimately downstream from in like a causal way. It is the cause of everything else. And I don't think that makes much sense to me. I don't think God needs to actually, like, God could technically be fully grounded by the universe, but not have any control over the universe. And I don't know if that necessarily means that God needs to be prescribed the values of what we do in the universe. You know what I mean? It almost sounds, it's kind of like smuggling in humanistic ideas into what God could be, because there's no reason that God needs to have values of anything that we have. It doesn't make sense to me to like think about God always within like a human framework, because humans aren't everything. So Tugby's work, we have P of X. P of X is a property, like mass. And the X here, P of X, X instantiates a qualitative property like mass. I remember my argument doesn't satisfy me, Lucy. I'm still an atheist, agnostic, right? It is a real question and a real thought-provoking like exercise, I think, to take some arguments for God seriously. Because I think it's part of the story. When we look around, when we look around, and almost everything in our lives is, you know, it's almost too inductive to imagine the universe being created by someone, because everything we know is almost a contingent and necessary relationship at all times. Like this marker, we know for a fact that someone made this. And we know for a fact that this phone was put together by someone. There's no rejection of like that very fact. It's a fact of explanation, right? And it makes inductive sense to think of the universe in the same way. So my argument again was to try and show atheists that it's not simple or easy or like cool to just dismiss every argument for God. And I also was annoyed with tag arguments because they suck. But so X here will be like mass, right? I'm gonna make this a little bigger. And then I think you're seeing my entire screen, so I'm gonna change this for you, okay? Because I think this isn't really helping you. Let me put the actual application up. There you go. Okay, it should be better now. So
Yeah, I can see it better.
we have D of X, which is a power or a disposition. So X here possesses a power disposition. So the way to think about this is mass, X, instantiates a qualitative property such as mass. X, the disposition to attract, possesses a power or disposition to attract. And then what this means is that the property of mass fully grounds the power. So the property is constitutively sufficient for the power, and it's a one-way metaphysical priority. So the power essentially depends on the property of mass, and it is a unidirectional or one-directional condition. It can never be the other way around, kind of like the desk and the atoms argument, which is why I found it very interesting, because that means that the property is a constitutively necessary thing for the power, and it's constitutively necessary for it, right? And this essentially means that the power depends on the property, though, and it is one direction in metaphysical priority. So there is a contingency argument in this explanatorily smuggled. It doesn't mean that conditional necessity of the ultimate universe is real, but what I write here for my own notes, right, is that conditional necessity within nature is somewhat of a smuggled in contingency argument. It doesn't mean that nature itself is necessity, because this is not about a necessary universe, but at its core, it is somewhat of a contingency argument. And that was the whole point of me bringing up Tugby for the most part. Kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, so what about the argument that I've heard some people argue, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but I'm curious how you'd respond to this, given this framework you're outlining, about that nothingness is necessary for existence because every determination is a negation.
Okay, so I think this is kind of like a smuggled in Humean objection, right? So I'm going to bring up Prost and Rasmussen. This is the book that I'm basing my contingency argument in. Prost and Rasmussen, this book is awesome. It's fantastic, man. They give a bunch of arguments here, a bunch of cosmological arguments, and they really take the time to. It's a really good book. If you want to read it and read certain chapters, right? then I can send it to you. But they do objections to contingency, and I think this is kind of what you're saying. It just sounds like different words, but the Humean objection goes like this. The concept of necessary existence cannot apply to anything in reality because anything that can be conceived of as existing can be conceived of as non-existing. So he just rejects the idea of necessary in general. He just thinks that it's applied framework of philosophy that doesn't really mean anything. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, so I'm saying that basically, if the universe exists
Necessarily.
rather than not, yeah. Well,
But he would reject the idea.
It's-
Hume rejects the necessary part. But I think Hume is wrong. Hume essentially says that conceive of as not existing. So he just says that the argument for contingency is unsound because its conclusion is inconceivable. Necessary doesn't mean anything. I reject necessary entirely. That's what he says.
yeah.
But
I mean,
he is
I
doing
don't-
a rationalist take, and the objection here is really good. I'm gonna give you the objection, okay? So their reply to him is this conceivability-based objection targets our conclusion, the argument from contingencies, a conclusion that they have. We will devote an entire chapter to dealing with this sort of objection. See chapter 9. For now, we will make 2 brief points. First, it is unclear what is meant by conceive of as not existing. And this is the part that really convinced me instantly. Can we conceive of numbers as not existing? If we can, must we thereby infer that the non-existence of numbers is metaphysically possible, as Hume's objection suggests? Many will find that implausible. And numbers here is meant as a, if we go to, I don't think they put a footnote here, they probably should have, but numbers here is the metaphysical concept of what the numbers represent, not the linguistic, 1, 2, 3. And I find this to be a good reply, because I don't think it's plausible to assume that the non-existence of numbers is possible metaphysically. That makes no sense. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, because numbers are necessary.
They're necessary abstracta, is what they call them in this book. And I think it's a good argument. They also devote a lot to Humean arguments. That's not what, well, Xrox, that's not what they said. Here, I'll repeat it again. So, he didn't ask whether they exist. That's not what they said. He said, can we conceive of numbers as not existing, as a metaphysical possibility? Not, are they tangible? So, the numbers that we use to describe reality, can we think of the representation of those concepts as metaphysically non-existent? Is that possible?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I feel like that's not
this is
plausible.
then I agree with you
Mhm.
that it's not plausible, like because you can conceive of things differently. I guess my question would be like, then why are you agnostic if you think this argument is convincing?
It's convincing on certain levels. So my position energy, my real position is humans, okay, Xrox, do numbers exist metaphysically without humans being alive? Or if humans didn't exist, would numbers and the representations of what they do as a concept metaphysically, would that still exist?
Are you like a mathematical Platonist?
It's not. I don't need to go any further. I'm not making a claim beyond that energy. I know what you're saying, but for this little question here, it's not that I'm asserting something beyond the representation of the numbers, but energy. Do you think the measurement of 2 inches wouldn't exist within, the universe if humans were not alive?
I think they would.
Humans apply the number 2 to it. Exactly. So the description of what is happening around us. Do you think the idea of numbers, not the symbols, the numbers as they exist? I know, I've already said this a million times. Numbers, that's why numbers is in italics. Numbers is in italics for a reason. It's not about the number 2. It's about the metaphysical concept of what it represents. That would exist whether humans exist or not.
Yeah, I agree with that. Then why are you an agnostic?
Okay, so energy. There's levels to this, okay? Correct. The symbols we use to apply math is irrelevant, but the symbols, the representations and concepts of what the symbols are supposed to represent, can we honestly say that we think that those are, we can conceive of them as non-existent? We can say that they don't exist, metaphysically. That to me is like, yeah, it seems implausible to me. I think they could not have failed to exist, at least in our universe, it seems. Right? Like, that's the argument. That's the connection to the necessary thing they're doing. So, in our universe, I think we cannot conceive of them as not existent. Because everywhere we look, the representation concepts of what these symbols represent seem like they don't fail to exist. They exist everywhere. Now, energy, to answer your question, I'm someone who believes that the universe has rich naturalism to it. So the natural world has real modal depth. And then I think that the existence of the universe at that modal depth is necessary in and of itself. I think it could not have failed to exist, but it has depth. I don't think that God is somehow like, in a way, my argument kind of allows for that to be true, depending on how restrictive or how expanded I want to make my God definition, right? In my argument, I use Aquinas, correct, at the end. So once I define everything and then invoke Tugby and show the metaphysical depth of the natural world, I use Aquinas to do essence, existence, and actuality. And like I write here, I don't spend a lot of time on it in my argument for a reason. I think it's a big modal jump and it doesn't satisfy me, but it is a real argument, right? Because the way this argument goes is, essence and existence is, we can explain, why something is, what something does or how it works, but it doesn't explain that it is, right? So that's what a finite thing is, does not explain that it is. It's pretty much just the simple arrangement of it.
Okay. So you think that the natural universe exists with modal depth, but you don't think that it could have failed to exist?
Correct. I think the depth of the universe and all of it at its most underived point is necessary in and of itself.
Well, what about the argument that we can conceive of the universe being different?
That's fine. Our universe would just be contingent at that point, and then the modal depth that we're talking about, right? If we have multiverses, then my argument still works, because the modal depth would be that the fact that multiple universes exist. I'm still arguing that whatever stopping point, whatever the point you stop at, is necessary in and of itself. It could not have failed to exist. Unless the universe is just entirely contingent forever. There's no stopping point. But I find that that doesn't make sense to me in my head. I think it's more of a stretch and more of a modal claim jump than just saying, the universe itself exists necessarily, has a stopping point. To me, it's more inductive.
Okay, so you think that the universe could not have failed to exist at some level.
When I say universe, though, just remember my argument I just said, there could be multiverses, and the greater encompassing part of all the multiverses would be the necessary universe that could not have failed to exist.
Okay, so you're saying our universe could have failed to exist in the sense that it's contingent on a multiverse, but whatever that
I'm not
multiverse
saying that.
is,
I'm saying that if someone wants to make the claim, my argument doesn't disallow that or reject that idea. But I think the idea of a multiverse is not demonstratably done logically yet. Depending on how you define universe. So I don't know.
So you're saying you would not disallow the idea that our universe could have been different, but even with the multiverse would have to be necessary at some level.
No. I'm gonna explain it again. Right now, I think the universe we live in, there's no multiverses, has real modal depth. There is natural layers to the universe that we see within our universe. No multiverse yet. Because of that, I think that the brute fact naturalist, which is someone who thinks that numbers in and of themselves just exist necessarily and explain everything, is no longer a valid conclusion. I think the universe has modal depth that's rich, and then that exists necessarily. And then the reason a multiverse claim or a multiverse proposal doesn't fail is because the very fact that I'm okay with the universe being expanded to some degree with rich modal depth doesn't just reject that idea of a multiverse. It just means that now we've moved the stopping point further out. But there is a little bit of Pandora's box there, right? Because then why would it continue? Why would it stop at all, right? So this is where I don't think I have an answer that's that good. But
Okay. So you're saying that, if I understand you correctly, that you don't think our universe could have failed to exist, but even if it could have, there could be a multiverse. But at the end of the day, whatever stopping point you have, there's going to be modal depth. It doesn't all reduce to one thing.
yeah, the stopping point is the necessary in and of itself. I don't think it's reliant on like a god. It doesn't satisfy me to say that, yeah. But again, my definition of God is pretty loose sometimes, so it depends on if I just call my definition an underived ground, then technically the stopping point for our universe right now could be numbers and shit, and that can be God in some, if I expand my definition even more, but I don't really want to do that. I kind of want to retain some exclusivity to it, right?
Yeah.
Or else it feels a little meaningless. It's difficult though.
Yeah, I know so. So you're not like a materialist. You don't think everything is like material.
No. I think that's like kind of logically. I feel like it's arrogant in a way because at the moment, a materialist or being a physicalist doesn't explain everything. And I feel like if someone wants to take the route of a hardline physicalist, they're just rejecting things they don't know yet, which I feel like is antithetical to what science is supposed to mean as an idea. It's almost like self-defeating.
That's exactly what I was saying.
I thought
That's what I was saying is that
I assumed reclusively that he was talking about physicalists, though, right? That's why I switched it to physicalism, because in the concept of what we're talking about, metaphysics, I think physicalist is the appropriate term, is it not?
I think I thought materialism and physicalism are the same thing.
They're not. No, they're not. Physicalism, I think, is what you were describing, though.
Well, what's the difference between physicalism and materialism?
Yeah. Here, I'll pull up.
What's the difference?
I got you. I actually have the exact difference from the Stanford Encyclopedia because I can't remember off the top of my head that well. So let's just go look it up.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do these things.
I agree, because like Daniel Dennett, for example, argued that like consciousness is just physical functions, like brain functions. But then the problem with that is there's two problems that I have with that. The first is we haven't been able to measure consciousness in a mathematical way, and then the second problem is consciousness also has a problem with regards to explaining.
That's right. It's a photo. This one's a photo, not a fucking
free will emerges.
Okay, so we have physicalism is going to be, I think it's like 1.3. I think it mentions it a little right here. I didn't read this entire thing. I skimmed through it and read it for my argument, right? I just needed to make sure I knew enough. But 1.3. So Mechanism was replaced by more liberal understanding. Science ceased to raise any objections to dualism and more generally to non-physical causes of physical effects. As a result, the default philosophical view was a non-naturalist interactive pluralism, which recognized a wide range of fundamental non-physical influences as something like determinations of the soul. And I'm going to skip a little bit so we don't have to fucking read forever. Okay. The acceptance of the causal closure of the physical led to the full-fledged physicalism. And this means that the causal closure thesis implied if mental and other special causes are to produce physical effects, they must themselves be physically constituted. Okay. So I actually think in a way Tugby's work, Reclusi, he's a physicalist in a way. He thinks there's some physical, like, actually, I don't know. Oh, no, it is physically constituted. Yeah, he is, yeah. So Tugby would be a physicalist. He thinks that gravity exists as some, or is grounded in a physical, constitutive way. And there's no like, that's why he doesn't describe a necessary universe. He doesn't actually go outside of physicalist. He thinks there's like a real physical, constitutive thing happening. So a materialist, though, I'm going to read Reclusi's thing really fast. Reductive accounts, namely mental chauvinism. Reductive here is probably going to work with things like consciousness and emergent. If we fully reduce the mental to the brain as type identity, then only humans experience particular mental states, which is just wrong. I agree. The issue of consciousness and free will extend to pretty much all physicalist account. Yeah, because it's emergent, right? Logic exists independent of human mind, at least in our universe that we can see. It's not, physicalists don't mean physical. It means that there's a physical constitutive thing happening. Like it's constitutively, it has like a constitutive physical thing to it.
Okay, so materialist and so physicalist is that it has a physical constitutive thing, and then what's materialism again?
Reclusi, because I don't want to read this entire naturalism fucking PDF, it's long. For materialism, that usually describes like more of a Brandon's pretty he's pretty adept with philosophy, by the way, Reclusi. You might like talking to him. I respect his opinion a lot, just to be clear. I mean, the laws of logic are descriptions. They're prescriptive. They're descriptions of us that we then know that are prescriptions on the universe we live in. But I mean, it's not like I'm gonna pull a tag argument on you, but they do. The laws of logic would govern the universe in a way if we did not exist still. So that's kind of what the, I think, argument there against what you said is. Like saying the laws of logic don't exist is, I don't think, metaphysically possible. I mean, it's like asking that consciousness doesn't exist. You know what I mean? We have no idea what it really is.
Yeah.
Because we can't like reduce it down to like brain matter, right?
So physicalism is the idea that everything is physically constituted, and then what is the definition of materialism?
Bro, to me.
Because I didn't really, yeah. Because I didn't really hear you give one.
Bro, to you.
Circa?
Sorry, no, you did Reclusi. He was like, no, I meant bro to you.
So what's materialism?
I asked Reclusi really fast, but I guess I'm gonna. He might be writing, but I'll scroll down. If I'm not mistaken, it's I think more of like a political ideology than anything else. But let's see. materialist was already slightly misleading. So from there, physicalism has emerged as a more palatable framework. Oh, so like material, I think, is slightly misleading because it tries to treat everything as if it's like a tangibly a tangible thing, I guess. Whereas physicalism still can account for something that is non-tangible, but is constantly sufficient by something, right? Is that, or sorry,
Okay, so
yeah,
so materialism is everything is tangible, and physicalism is everything is physically explainable.
that might be it. Is that a good way? Actually, Reclusi, does that sound like a good way to explain it? That to me
Yeah,
sounded like a
but
good way to
then-
explain it.
But part of the problem is that that physicalism and materialism can't account for the fact that we seem to be able to control our stream of consciousness. Like we seem to basically, whenever a thought pops in our head, it seems as though we can control whether we focus on the thought or not.
I like how my title is like completely different than what I'm talking about right now. Should I change my title, everyone? Circa Philosophy Hour. I want to get back to the Iran deal, actually. Or actually, we can watch. Does anyone want to watch this? I haven't watched this yet. It's apparently a video from Andrew. This is the only video that Andrew Wilson made on my fascist debate with him.
I don't really want to watch this, but we can if you want.
You don't really want to watch this?
Because I think I saw some of the debate and it just seems like you and Andrew were just sort of arguing and arguing and
Wanted to
arguing.
take-
But
That's how debates
it
work.
doesn't seem like there was. I know, but some debates there's more progress than others. It just didn't seem like this was a very debate with the progress. But if yeah, you can watch it.
Well, there are two ways to
Fine.
debate this concept, okay? There are two ways. Because energy, it could look like this, all right? Am I against the Iran war? I'm against the Iran war. I think it's dangerous. I think there really is no plan. Trump just showed that that Iran can win a war against the US because we can't fucking go into Iran and like without risking tens of thousands of lives of our soldiers. And he ultimately is now getting a worse deal by a literal universal fucking speed of light length than what the JCPOA had. And not only that, but it probably won't even go through because Israel's not going to let that amount of money happen, and we're in a worse place for it. So it's also just like a really bad signal to the rest of the world in a world that already has bad signaling by world leaders, where Taiwan is more at risk whenever we make these decisions to just do whatever we want. And sorry, bud. So energy, it could look like this, I guess, right? Or is it? You suck ass. Plead ignorance and just vibe it. Vibe code the debate. That's what ChatGPT said to him. Hey, Paul, I think you fucking suck and blow at this one. I think you should just vibe control. I'm not like the other guys. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I will elongate every syllable until it's fucking super chill, and then we're gonna just vibe it, dude. I'm gonna vibe code with fascism around. I'm gonna tell you the 14 tenets of a hyper-specific brand of fascism, in which if you actually read Umberto Eco's material, he would tell you that it's a very hyper-specific idea of what fascism can look like in the modern day. But here we are, Paul's ego is overtaking what Umberto Eco has written himself so he can fucking diagnose what fascism is. I swear to God, if Umberto Eco heard this, he'd probably be like, get my wife's name out of your fucking mouth. Do you know what that debate was like? Energy?
I don't know.
Take over
But
the
in terms of
election.
analyzing fascism, have you ever? Didn't you say that you read like what's it called? Ordinary Men by Christopher Browning.
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay. What about or you said it was a Milton, I think it was a Milton Mayer book. It was some book about the average journalist and the journalist goes to Nazi Germany you're describing a journalist going to Nazi Germany and saying that like he found that ordinary Germans were complicit in this
Whoa!
immorality.
One sec, I have to address them. What do you mean? You noticed I was afraid of dead U.S. soldiers and not the people who already died? I definitely don't want. I actually have no trust in Trump to care about the Iranian people. I feel like what you just said there is leading and not accurate. Just because I didn't happen to say that the people of Iran, you know, they definitely don't deserve what Trump is doing. I gave you a U.S. perspective from whether or not the war in Iran would be feasible, whether or not it's morally just for us. Yeah. I mean, the Ayatollah is a pretty bad regime, right? But I also said I don't think we should just go around like signaling that we can attack any country we want. And I definitely think Trump is dangerous. Like I said in the beginning, I have no trust that he would care about the Iranian people whatsoever. And that's also something that's not good. So there can be justification for war. Guy with mean smirk. Hypothetically, let's just assume we're in Rwanda right now, okay? And you are a Canadian general, lieutenant general, and you're sent there to manage a peacekeeping mission between the Tutsis and the other faction. I can't remember their name. A civil war was still occurring during that time, right? And only a month later, after you finally had an election take place within the country, 1 million people would die in a span of 100 days. Hutu, that's right. Is there a justification for the U.S. that has all of the power and capability of stopping that from happening? Do you think we should just let that happen like we did? Clinton let that happen, by the way. Most of the world, including people who lived through that time, think it was a mistake, especially because we had troops on the ground, and so did every other country. And we literally brought our troops in, and we just got our people out, and then we left. We did nothing. Is there no justification to help the Tutsis? I think that was a mistake. Okay. This one's more complicated. I think Israel's actions are unforgivable. Just to be clear. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm just going to engage with them just for a second. So, one, Israel was invaded in 1967 by Egypt, Syria, Jordan. Kind of. Jordan didn't want to, but Syria convinced them by lying to them, saying that a lot of their aircraft were damaged, and the Jordanian king was ultimately manipulated into fighting. And Israel preemptively attacked Egypt because the Syrian king signaled publicly that he was going to attack Israel. Or do you not remember that part? Yeah, sorry. Technically, the first attack was an Israeli Air Force attack, which was extremely well done against Egyptian airfields. But Israel did not attack out of thin air. The Syrian king said he was going to attack in days, along with Egypt. And Jordan, again, was pretty hesitant. They didn't want to, but I don't think Iran is justified, no. I am confused. I mean, I was just giving history. I don't think Israel's actions right now are justified, by the way. Israel is like impossible to defend right now. They're committing a genocide. It's just Netanyahu's probably done more damage to Jewish people than fucking anyone else I can probably imagine on planet Earth outside of like Ben-Gvir, who's just a fucking absolute monster. And Netanyahu probably doesn't even realize it. The people of Israel, though, can still come back and they can democratically fix this. It'll be hard, though. So. It is a lot of money. Again, the total amount of money given to Israel. And I want to push back on one more thing. Sorry, I'm Fred if you're here. Biden was very close to eliminating all aid for Israel because of Palestine. He was days away from doing it. His administration did not do it simply because there was a part of his administration that made the case that if they do decide to take away all of the military aid, that leaves Israeli citizens open to risk. And it was a very real risk. And Biden decided to not stop aid because of that one reason. He was ready to fucking rescind all of it. And Biden is like best friends with Netanyahu. Netanyahu went to his fucking dead wife's funeral back in like 69 or something. His dead wife and his dead daughter, they both died in a car accident. And Netanyahu was there. So that, I don't really know why we think we can just reduce people like Biden or whoever we want down to these like super fucking infinitesimal figures that just have no brains and no morals. But when you actually take the time to go a little bit deeper, you might have more of an understanding of these things. Not to be an asshole.
Playing chess on a board that isn't really defined.
Anyways, energy, this is what I was getting at, because I know my debate looked like I was debating Andrew.
Yeah.
But it could be worse, man. It could be like this.
I was asking about it because you're saying, didn't you say you read about like a journalist who went to Nazi Germany who studied how average people went into fascism?
Wait, what?
Didn't you say that you studied how a journalist who went to Nazi Germany and studied how ordinary Germans were susceptible to fascism?
No, I think you're talking about they thought they were free, right? Milton Meyer, the Jewish journalist who went to, not Nazi Germany, he went to Germany in the 1950s and became friends with 10 Nazis who lived through the Third Reich, and then became friends with them over time, but never told them that he was Jewish. And it's an insight. It's a really good book, Rand. I do like that book a lot. I think everyone should read it.
Well, so what I was getting at was the idea that the ordinary Germans were susceptible to being Nazis.
One sec, I'm gonna answer this question or claim. There are no good party in Israel. What percentage, Helgenatorium, did Netanyahu win the most recent 2022 election with? Do you know? How much of the vote did he win with? Do you have any idea? Again, I'm not gonna sit here and like defend Israel's genocide of Palestine. That's not gonna fucking happen. But I'm also not gonna just like act as if Israel is some monolithic state. And ethno-state or not, you have to remember the world created Israel after World War II, consensually designing an ethno-state for them. So we don't really get to rescind that fact. What the fuck?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, but I can you just address that point real quick, Circa? That the ordinary Germans were susceptible to fascism?
everyone is susceptible to fascism.
Yeah, well, that's the point. Is that when you live in a meaningless a society where people don't find meaning in life,
It's
you're
not about meaning.
susceptible
It's not
to
about meaning. It's
fascism.
not about meaning. It's much more visceral. It's like what Reclusi just said, actually, perpetrator disgust, where the idea of a fascist movement, again, is centered around this myth of your group or identity being the real nation, right? And because of a relationship between other things in the country that are not part of that identity, it becomes an existential thing where the movement can give a certain meaning and is exhilarating, but it's not because there's a lack of meaning. It's because there's a certain group that is mobilized via Paxton, again, would write certain passions. And again would be, funny enough, I still have the book right in front of me. Paxton writes this on page 21, if I'm not mistaken. And page 198 or something like that, or two. One of these. I'll get them for you. They're actually really good. They might actually make you, you know, they might ring a bell, I feel like, when a lot of people hear these. It's kind of interesting. So, the passions, okay? Here's the passions that Paxton would write, okay? A sense of overwhelming crisis beyond the reach of any traditional solutions. Sounds vague, but also very relevant, especially when you're thinking about existential crisis, right? If you're a group like Christian nationalists who feel like there is an overwhelming fucking crisis where gender is under attack, you know, the very existence of your church, the very existence of man and woman even, that can be beyond traditional solutions, right? Where you need some sort of executive one. The primacy of the group, toward which one has duties superior to every right, whether individual or universal, in the subordination of the individual to it. So that one right there is a little more detailed, a little more complex, but I think we can all agree that sometimes when people believe that there's something the individual must be subordinate to that is more primal, then if it is within an overwhelming crisis, the first passion there becomes well within reach. If you think it's existential and that there's a more primal thing that you need to be subordinate to, you're more willing to take the risk to do that. The belief that, like, the majority of Israel are not Zionist? Hello? The fuck? What? What the hell are you talking about? Yeah, now I'm getting one guy again. Bro, literally kill me. Do you see the numbers here? What does that say? Is that the majority? 23%? Now you can include some of these other. I have them right here. You think all of these are Zionist? Like Zionist groups? Are you serious? There's no way. What kind of indoctrination are you fucking reading? There are literally large parties here that advocate against the idea of secularization and Zionism in general. Kamala probably would have advanced Biden's already. She would have brought in the same people and very likely could have pulled funding if the same administration, you know, the people that were in, yeah, but this one right here, the second one, right? How's that Zionist? An entire political party right now. The second largest one, man. Not that far off. Fuck. God damn it. I mean, fuck. So the second largest party with only 5% less vote, Helgenatron, okay, has in their platform, dude, a outline of 2 states for 2 peoples. And calls for, it does maintain settlement blocks, but it doesn't advance anymore. I don't even know what to tell you. Like, you can do 2 things at once here, okay? You can criticize the fact that Netanyahu's government he's guilty of war crimes. They're committing a genocide in that it's unjustifiable. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit here and say that like what Israel is doing is okay. Israel has killed more people in Lebanon than like 4 times as many as what Hamas did on October 7th, and they're not even at war with Lebanon. Like, what the fuck is that? How is that even fucking possible, right? Unjustifiable. But in the same way, man, are you from the U.S.? This is a really important conversation now, okay? I'm from the U.S. My country is killing people in Iran, and we've also killed hundreds of random people on boats and hundreds of people in Yemen. And do you think it would be okay to say that, like, the U.S. entirely, every person within it is now, unable to come back from this? I don't want any of that. And the same is true inside of Israel. There's massive portions of the population that do not agree with a single fucking thing that's happening. But very much like my own country, what am I supposed to do? I stream because of it, so I can, inform people, I guess. But couldn't you say the same thing about the U.S. right now? Okay, so you're not criticizing the people.
Yeah.
You said no good.
I mean,
You said no good party in Israel. That means literally no people are good. What do you think parties are made of? Entire parties in Israel have literally outlines for 2 states. And it's a very large percentage, man. They didn't lose by much. The only reason Benjamin Netanyahu won is because he had to assimilate with some very fucking awful people. And those people have a lot of power right now. Ben Gvir and Yoav Gallant need to go to jail for war crimes. They need to be tried. 100%.
well, Ben Gvir is,
You
to
don't
my
need the
understanding, very
state?
unpopular in Israel.
You don't need the state? What does that mean? What does you don't need the state mean? Like anarchist stuff?
So I converted to Judaism, and
Religiously, right?
so I know.
Well, you're a
Religiously.
messianic Jew, right?
No, I don't believe Jesus is the Messiah.
So you're an anarchist.
Anarchist.
That's what
What?
this person's an anarchist, yeah.
Oh, this person is.
I don't
But-
really know what that's supposed to mean about claiming Israel is like entirely unjustifiable, or I guess the greater argument here is that governments and the way we run them should just be anarchist in general, which, I mean, if you want to talk about that, we can talk about that. There's problems with anarchy. Too many people treat anarchy like it's a real noun, but it's really just a verb. So I'd like to know how you can argue for that. I mean,
But when I converted to Judaism, most of the Jewish and most of the Israeli people that I know are against Ben Gvir.
they're against Netanyahu, which is why it's weird that people say Israel is like a terrorist state when Israel majorly does not agree with what Israel's doing. Anarchism is a pretty complex philosophy, so I'm going to wait until this person, if they want to talk about it, describes what they think it is. Like people like Max Stirner, right? Which, you know, I kind of became more familiar with because of people like Energy and Grant. It's not as simple as just like, you know, anarchy, but I think there are still real big problems with it when it comes to like actually governing. I didn't say you were. I said you helped me understand it more, Grant. Correct? Okay. So,
Sorry, my thing cut out. I missed what you said.
I was talking to Graham.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with anarchism is that they don't have a
Easy definition for what they mean.
That's because it's that's because the problem of anarchy, I think, comes down to what the word means. It means to destroy the government, dismantle the government, in a way. And whenever you're done doing that, or the state of chaos, you kind of need some form of non-chaos, which I think is kind of at a disposition against, or in juxtaposition against, what anarchy represents. It's probably fun when you're doing the anarchy. That sucked. Decentralization. Mutual aid networks would be centralized. Even if you decentralize multiple types of mutual aid networks, you would have to centralize them some way. Direct democracy implies that you now have not an anarchist state, you have a hierarchy. Someone must allocate how to represent the votes, someone must verify them, someone must distribute them. So seems to me that we're going towards like Kropotkin, right? So this would be like anarchist communism, right? Am I correct? This would be where you're informing yourself the most? Federations, all that kind of stuff? Conquest of bread? Or am I wrong? I'm just going to pull up my critique of communism right now because I know exactly, I think, where this person's coming from. And I've read Conquest of Bread now. It's a very annoying book. I really don't like the way he writes. He writes specifically for people who agree with him, and that fucking pisses me off. It's really annoying. But that doesn't mean a lot of his work in that book is not good. It is actually okay. But I think that is where you're going, correct? Sorry, I didn't mean to say retarded. I need to find my most up-to-date thesis on this. No, my problem with like Kropotkin or I can never say his real name, Crockpot. I'm gonna I literally Ancom cannot. He literally is like, why can't you say his name? You can say like, you know, Anton Haniko properly, but not him. And I just cannot remember his goddamn name. But let me pull up the most up-to-date one I made, okay? So my critique of communism, okay? And I do have one. right? So I go through a few different things here, all right? Mikhail Bakunin, I don't know who that is. So this is kind of like a rejection of, or a critique of communism as it relates to economic functions, not really political ideology, okay? So when you say earlier, promote decentralization, build mutual aid networks, and implement direct democracy. Before I go any further, I kind of want you to expand on that a little bit. I know you just said Mikhail Bakunin, so I'm going to pull that guy up really fast and see what kind of books he has, okay? Revolutionary anarchist, a Russian, okay. This is early. Would it be fair to say this person influenced people like Rosa Luxemburg and Peter Kropotkin? Yeah, okay. So Kropotkin, definitely influenced by him. So very similar, I'm assuming. This is old. This is much older, though. So let's see. I actually don't know much about this guy. I know Maida, but what they described reminded me of Kropotkin, and just as lo and behold, the person that they named has a massive influence on the first name is Kropotkin. So I don't think I'm wrong in assuming that. Just throwing that out there. Okay. I do want to get some of his books though really fast. So let's see if I can find some of his books. Do you have books somewhere? There we go. The God in the State. God or Labor. Social Upheaval. That sounds relevant. Policy in the Council. Collections. Let's do this pamphlet. Statism. Oh, man. Okay, so now God in the State is good. We'll do that one. Can I get the full fucking thing, please? Quick, don't look. Bad Nick. Bad Nick. Stop it. What you saw there is not happening, okay? I buy books. I buy all of them. All of the books. They're purchased, okay? Don't ever forget. Every one of them, okay, is purchased. Holy, this is small. And we're back. Boom. Oh, shit. God in the State. Introduction. I don't really want to read the introduction. This is a really bad PDF because, my God, is there some lag. Polemical impact. Okay, okay. Right off the bat, I like this line. Okay. Tend to soften its polemical impact because I swear to God, I wish more Marxist writers understood the fact that when they write sometimes, it's literally Capitalism is a blood-sucking vampire. The workers' revolution will come. It's just like every fucking time they do an objection, they're literally just soaked in the most insane rhetoric. And hopefully we can move past that, okay? If God really existed, it would be necessary to abolish him. Okay. One of us is soon. Oh, preface in the. I don't want to read a preface. I want to read what he says. There we go. Ye olde English W. Let's go. What is that? Holy fucking medieval times, bro. Can you imagine the person who, or him, if he wrote it like this? He's like sitting there with like just who written down. He's like, what if I just turn the W into like a fucking burning candle? Who are right, the idealist or the materialist? Ooh. Certainly someone who, like we just mentioned earlier, Reclusi, is unaware of what the physicalist is. The question, when stated in this way, hesitation becomes impossible. Undoubtedly, the idealists are wrong and materialists are right. Yes, facts are before ideas. Yes, the ideal, as Proud Han said, is but a flower whose root lies in the material conditions of existence. Okay. Yes, the whole history of humanity, intellectual and moral, political and social, is but a reflection of its economic history. Very reductionist. I think this is probably not a good way to look at the universe. I think the history of humanity did not only reflect its economic history. I feel like that's taking every individual idea, every individual love, every individual everything that's ever existed and reducing it to something that is secondary and ultimately not relevant. It's like saying the human condition is economic. It's just weird. All branches of modern science, of true and disinterested science, concur in proclaiming this grand truth. I think that's a mischaracterization. I don't think modern science, even at his day, outside of maybe a few loud individuals, would ever say that they have a grand truth. In fact, if you ever read the writings of science, even like Newton's work, things like grand truth and fundamental and decisive are not really a part of the vocabulary. I don't really like that part. The social world, properly speaking, the human world, in short, humanity is nothing other than the last and supreme development. Little bit, I do, yeah, I know. Consequentialness there. At least on our planet, and as far as we know, the highest manifestation of animality. A little bit of an evolutionary argument there. I mean, this is around the time when the origin of species was literally destroying everyone's brain, so maybe. As every development necessarily implies a negation, that of its base or point of departure, humanity is at the same time and essentially the deliberate and gradual negation of the animal element in man. And it is precisely this negation, as rational as it is natural, and rational only because natural, little circular, at once historical and logical, as inevitable as the development and realization of all the natural laws in the world. Holy fucking run-on sentence. Is this Donald Trump right now? God damn. I need to read that last part again. As inevitable as the development and realization of all the natural laws in the world that constitutes and creates the ideal. I don't like that. I think the ideal exists as a hyperconceptual space before any realization even happens. I think the ideal is an infinite thing. Actualizes, maybe? This is kind of like a little bit close to my theory of democracy here, where institutions can historically and logically actualize things like ideals or the will in the natural world. But I would never claim that they have any way of realizing or creating them. They just actualize portions of them. Our ancestors, our Adams and Eves, were, if not gorillas, very near relatives of gorillas. Definitely plagued by evolutionary origin of species. Omnivorous, intelligent, and ferocious beasts endowed in a higher degree than the animals of any other species with two precious faculties: the power to think and the desire to rebel. Gorillas cannot do that in the way that he just described. It's okay though, this is old, so I'm just going to let it go. These faculties, combining the progressive action in history, represent the essential factor: the negative power and the positive development of human animality, and create, consequently, all that constitutes humanity in man. Oh, is our friend still here?
I'm here. Are you talking about me?
No energy. Fuck you. No, I'm kidding. No, you're fine. I'm talking about Helen Gunatorium.
Yeah, well, the point, but just to the earlier point about meaning, I think this is related to anarchism, is that what I think that
Okay.
you should consider reading about the work of logotherapy, which is a school of psychiatry developed by Viktor Frankl, where he says that meaning is a primary motive of life in people.
Did this
that what
motherfucker just say,
natural-
what did you say? Logo, what is it?
Logotherapy.
Logotherapy. What?
That's the name of the game.
That sounds like a helicopter mom's fantasy of like a therapy session. For like her kid who has for her kid who has like anger issues. Mom,
Well,
I don't
so he
want to
was-
go to logotherapy. Too bad. You fucking punch Sarah in class. You're fucking going.
Well, so he was a Holocaust survivor, and people had better mental health outcomes when they had something to live for.
Is that logical?
Yeah.
What if
I think
what
so.
if
I
the
mean-
thing you're living for is incorrect?
Well, the evidence, as far as I can tell, generally supports the idea that people are happy when they live for something greater than some.
But what if it's an incorrect thing? Is it still logical?
Well, what's an example of an incorrect thing that you could live for?
Well, fascists live for a fascist movement, and I think we can all agree that fascists are incorrect about their movement, but the feeling of being in a fascist movement is very real. However, I wouldn't really describe it as logical, that's for sure.
Yeah, I would think, but I don't think he was saying meaning. I think he would agree that the meaning you live for has to be ethical.
No, it doesn't.
Well, I'm saying, according to his psychological theory, you would live a more meaningful life if you lived according to ethics.
What if the meaning of your life at that moment was to liberate and defeat an existential crisis? Wouldn't it be valid to ethically enact violence? My love, I love you.
I don't think so.
It wouldn't? You don't think it's ethical to defend yourself?
Well, that's only if it actually is occurring. But like when people say they go through existential crisis, they could be mistaken about it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It would be logical then. Oh wait, you're leaving? It's energy. Energy's in the call. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm going to continue. I think I found a part where this book is kind of giving more thought to what our new chatter was saying, okay? So I see a little bit of anarchy underpinning here, right? So an emancipation of himself and the rebellion here and the human animality and the appearance of thought is in a way, some way that you could go back to a more natural state, right? So the idea of anarchy, in my opinion, politically, the reason it's a very, like, I like Rosa Luxemburg a lot. I read her all the time. I even have quite a few of these ones. They're pretty dense books, right? But Rosa Luxemburg, I think, shares this principle a little. She's not an anarchist per se, but the eternal revolution of the individual against the state is kind of grounded in the idea that the individual must be in conflict against that state, or else they lose human, like the human side of them a little bit. It's like a sporadic individual that becomes a communal idea. It's difficult, though, to try and practically enact that idea or that ideal. So it's almost like substituting an ideal for what may happen in reality, because ideals are necessary. The ideal of wanting, having the freedom of what we imagine ourselves to be in nature, right, is an ideal that you should strive towards. It's negative freedom at its core. It is freedom from coercion, and whenever we talk about all of these different, natural rights, whatever you want to call it, they all kind of play at something that's similar to negative freedom in a way, right? The problem here is that oftentimes I find individuals or people who become dogmatically predisposed to only feel like the ideal is correct. And I didn't really say that well, so let me try and say it again. An ideal is necessary, but also equally as necessary is how the ideal can actually manifest in a practical way. And what I mean by that is an ideal is not enough. Like, you can't operate in the world without an ideal to strive towards, but you can't just supplant reality with an ideal, or else you become blind to what it does in reality. So the ideal of an anarchist society is a really important ideal, in my opinion. I can value the importance of specific parts of it, but far too often I find people who want to polemically reinforce the ideal as if it can just magically happen in reality. And that's every single ideology you can think of has this problem. And it tends to dismiss any argument against some internal critique of it. So for anarchists, I find a lot that the idea of like a democratic decentralization is just easily attainable. And somehow the abolition of money is possible. And there's something else that happens when you do this. So like, in an effort to achieve freedom, which a lot of communists and anarchists value pretty heavily, the ideal of like being truly free and having respect over the natural rights that are inherent to the animalistic nature, right? What often happens is they don't realize that people themselves can become something else. So capitalism does something pretty important within human society, and that is the idea of like fungible, alienable capital. So that means fungible means a transactionary token type idea where it's easily transferable, and then alienable means obviously you can take it. It's apart from you. So if you get rid of these things, like if you get rid of private property, and aka money in this case, then you might be able to get rid of that very, idea of fungible, alienable capital. But you do have an issue still. People must be organized. So that means if you get rid of the only thing that is alienable, that means labor is now the central question of how capital is distributed. So all that's left is you have a organization of that labor is now the capital, which means people themselves become the capital in a communist anarchist society. And
Yeah, I gotta get going. It was good talking to you.
yeah, good
I'll
talking
see
to
you later.
Do you mind grabbing my stuff really fast? I have about 10 minutes, by the way, guys, but I'll try and cover that. I don't want to like ignore your on God in the state thing. But what I think I'm going to do, if you're welcome to come back. Sorry for being an asshole here. I'll read more of this, and then I'll give you more of his work, and then I'll give you my actual thoughts, because I don't know enough about Mikhail Bakunin to really say anything. So I'm going to cover my quick little critique really fast, and I think that probably gives me enough time to do that. But I will read, a little bit of it, and if you come back, I'll try and give you my real opinion. But it does seem that Bakunin is a huge influence on Kropotkin, who is an anarchist communist. Okay, so my argument is kind of centered around that idea of anarchist communism with Kropotkin right now. So the problem here is that whenever you get rid of any capitalist command, you are now still have to explain how the social command of labor is done. And in an effort to get freedom, in an effort to be a free individual underneath a communist anarchist system, the problem now is that who decides where labor goes? And even if you decentralize it to a bunch of different councils, a lot of this work comes from this guy, right? Anton Panenko. He's essentially probably one of the leading writers on what workers' councils are. He's a Dutch Marxist who was very much involved with Lenin before Lenin and him split because he doesn't agree with Lenin's Vanguard Party, right? And neither did Rosa Luxemburg. But the problem with workers' councils is that the labor still has to be organized. So that means that time and all of these scarce things still need to be governed. So you can get rid of a capitalist command, but you still have to explain how you're going to subordinate people to some sort of command in order to get things done. So if you abolish the politics of capitalism, then you're not going to be able to get rid of the economic function of how capital runs and investment and all that kind of stuff, because labor itself now becomes the investment. Without capital, you cannot invest in places without moving people, so you're going to have to commit much more. And with capital, you can invest in places without moving or relocating. It's really important. It allows for a clean investment vehicle. And I'm not defending capitalism here completely. I want to make that clear. Capitalism is not perfect. It definitely has issues, and I'm a pluralist, so I think that if we had a hypothetical, more socialized economy, much in like the anarchist communist way, but we retained a small amount of capitalist ideas and it functioned better, then I don't care. Let's do that. I think that whatever is the most efficient or better for the country and its people is the best idea. And I studied economics. Just so you know, I have a background in economics, econometrics, which is why I talk about economics a lot. And economics may sound like a capitalist political ideology, but it's not. It is fundamentally about how to distribute the scarce resources of a society. Those don't go away if you get rid of capital. So time, desire, all of those things are economically modeled within functions. So in an effort to become more free, that means that you might end up with less freedom, because let's say a communist anarchist society that has workers' councils decides that it needs to develop a new area that is outside of where you live, and there's not a lot of development there yet. So how do we get people to move there? Well, the answer from a council is we democratically elect people to relocate. Now, this is where the issues arise. Can you freely exit councils? If so, can you reject that democratic proposal? If you get democratically elected to be sent to somewhere else to develop a new area, are you able to reject that? If not, you have no freedom anymore. You are essentially being socially driven, and you've replaced capitalist bosses with now councils, and nothing has changed. In fact, it's even more invasive, because what if you like the school your kid's at? What if we know that councils and workers' councils and all these little decentralized entities are going to be varying in size, and they're going to be exclusive, because if they vary in size, and let's just assume people can freely leave them, like an anarchist communist society would assume, Kropotkin would say that there is voluntary association. That means they're going to compete with labor, people, like capitalist companies. They're going to be incentivized to remain stable, because if people can leave at will, they have to compete for the very labor itself. And now you've replaced capitalist companies with something that acts the same way. So when they compete like this, they're going to take on a firm-like function. And then we still have not answered the vehicle here. So capitalist economies can exploit. By definition, they must. They can exclude. All of this is true. But investment vehicles are very important in economic functions, okay? So capital is alienable. You can invest in something across the country without moving anyone, and you can literally stop if it's not working. If it's an uncertain project, you can still fund it. You don't have to get permission for it because councils don't know everything. They do not have the capacity to democratically just find the right answer to everything. Sometimes failure or uncertainty in a project can be the best thing. And we can't eliminate that idea, that freedom. So if private capital is abolished, like an anarchist communist society would say, there is a massive investment problem, because if these councils become exclusive and sticky and compete for labor, they're not going to want to have people leave, because councils are going to be determined by the labor itself. The productive value carrier is going to become people itself. So they're not going to want to let people leave. Good doctors are going to make that area more valuable by definition. So that means people are going to be, if someone leaves, they're taking their value with them. And that means bad things for your collective. So we've now incentivized a problem running both ways. So development outside of a already established area doesn't have a vehicle to invest in it. And then second, people are going to be incentivized to not leave to go to those areas. So now, in order to get things done, we have to force them through democratic means. And that sounds fine when you say it in like it's for the greater good thing, but people cannot be reduced to that. You cannot reduce the individual to, well, we voted, so you have to move your entire family to some random area that doesn't have good doctors because it doesn't have good anything. But it might come in the future. That is fucking insane. That is insane. And it's a big hole in like a pure communist society that I've noticed. I don't really know anyone who has an objection to this that makes sense yet. Besides Ancom, he's given me some good ideas on how to talk about it. But the truth is that mobility now is a real test. So in an effort to get freedom from the capitalist, you have to ask these questions now. Can you leave the council? I agree. Again, I think I want to be very honest here. If we had a style of economy that was more like a communist anarchist society and it retained some element of fungible capital and private property, but it was predominantly and dominantly a anarchist communist society, I would not care. If it was better, I'm all for it. So I'm not like against the idea of any ideology in this sense. But the question here of like abolishing private capital completely, these are questions one must ask themselves. Syndicalism is anarcho-communist Kropotkin. I'm addressing him. Federations are like that. Except he abolishes private property in his writing. The syndicalist part, beyond that, is where people start to incorporate firm-like capitalist functions back into these federations. So it's a pluralist. You're no longer doing pure communism at that point. That's my argument here, is that pure communism abolishing capital and private property is not viable, because people themselves become the capital and investment vehicles are gone now. So can you leave the council? Can I enter another? Can I refuse necessary labor? Can I relocate? Can I start a project the collective does not recognize? And I go further, right? And I also go a little bit further to say that people themselves, the individual, is not merely just labor waiting to be assigned, right? That's, I think, reducing the alignment of an organizational aim away from an individual aim, which overlap, but they can never be the same. And then I argue my position already that a pluralist answer is the best one. So we can become more of a serious socialist society and still retain a lot. This is my writing. What are you talking about? I wrote this. The fuck are you talking about? What? Yeah, I want your thoughts on this theory. Theory Unchained is actually a communist who I like listening to a lot. It reads like AI. Is that because I write it in a simple way, or these are my tenets? So. The nanobots? I mean, so I know what you're describing there. Is this something that is just like unique to AI, or it is somewhat? I actually value Marx's writing a lot. Correct, yeah. Marx actually in the 18th of Brumaire, I actually went back and read it before I wrote this theory, and like I mentioned here, Marx is careful. He's very careful. He identifies that economic functions, and this is ripped directly from him. The organization of labor power, historical organization of labor power, I ripped right from him. And I think Lenin's mistake, like I put here, is that he thinks he can abolish, and I noticed this too in Lenin's writing with the state and the revolution or whatever, is that he thinks he can abolish the bourgeoisie class when Marx explicitly says in the 18th of Brumaire that because the proletariat is a secondary form of the bourgeoisie, it is impossible to destroy the bourgeoisie class in essence. The proletariat will always have, and it is like definitive. You can never fully eliminate a value or something like that. And Marx correctly, I think, describes that you can only, like the bourgeoisie cannot be eliminated fully, is what he describes. I'll be right back. Give me a second. Yeah, of course. Sorry, I have to get dressed for work. Fucking. Yeah, you're welcome. Again, I'll read and I'll read more of what's his name? Can't remember. Bakunin. Yeah. Thanks for closing. This is why I wake up every day at 5:30 and go to the gym. Literally every day. I'm a fucking psycho. Read Sorrel. Fuck you, Vigilante. I'm not gonna read Sorrel. But yeah, I have to go to work, guys. Theory, I'll send you this again, okay? I think I sent it to you, but I'll just do it again really fast. That way you can read it on your own, and then because I am interested in what you say about it, okay? Truth be told. Here it is. Theory Unchained. He's a Leninist. This him right there. He's a Leninist and who I think has a good disposition on his ideals, right? He's a communist that I'm taking seriously because I like the vigor and respect he has for it. Yeah, of course, man. I like to notice when people put more time into their thoughts and positions, right? And plus, those people can help you make your position better. So, and I definitely believe that. But anyways, I have to go. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out, A-Town. Oh, sure.